The slap echoed through the marble lobby like a gunshot. 50 guests turned to stare as the operations manager's hand connected with the quiet man's face. The man in worn jeans and a faded jacket who'd asked for nothing more than basic respect. He didn't flinch, didn't raise his voice. He simply pulled out his phone and made one call. 60 seconds later, the woman who'd struck him received a call that drained every drop of color from her face, because the nobody she'd just assaulted owned everything she was standing on. If you want to see arrogance meet accountability, stay until the end. Hit that like button and comment what city you're watching from. I want to see how far this story travels. The coastal highway stretched before Ethan Brooks like a ribbon of possibility, the afternoon sun turning the Pacific Ocean into a sheet of hammered gold. He'd been driving for 6 hours straight, his 12-year-old Honda Civic humming with the kind of reliable mediocrity that made luxury car salesmen weep. The back seat held a single duffel bag, a worn leather messenger bag containing his laptop, and a framed crayon drawing his 7-year-old son Marcus had made. A stick-figure dad and son building sandcastles under a smiling sun. Ethan's reflection in the rearview mirror showed a man who looked older than his 38 years. Dark circles shadowed eyes that had seen too many late nights reviewing acquisition reports and financial statements. His jaw, normally clean-shaven for video conferences with international investors, now carried 3 days of stubble. The white t-shirt and faded denim jacket he wore had cost maybe $40 combined, a far cry from the tailored suits that hung in his closet back in San Francisco. He preferred it this way. The exit for Azure Crest Resort appeared like a promise on the horizon. Ethan had purchased the property 18 months ago through a web of holding companies and investment vehicles so complex that even his own legal team sometimes needed flowcharts to explain the ownership structure. On paper, Azure Crest was owned by Meridian Holdings, which was owned by Pacific Trust Group, which was owned by Brooks Family Investments, which was controlled by Ethan Brooks. In practice, this meant absolutely no one at the resort had any idea who actually signed their paychecks. That anonymity was precisely the point. Ethan turned off the highway onto a private road lined with royal palms that swayed in the ocean breeze. The resort revealed itself gradually. First the manicured gardens where every bush was trimmed to geometric perfection, then the championship golf course where tiny figures in polo shirts tracked the arc of expensive golf balls, and finally the main building itself, a masterpiece of modern architecture that somehow managed to look both imposing and welcoming, all glass and white stone and sweeping curves that mimicked the waves beyond. He'd paid $143 million for this place, and he was about to walk in looking like he couldn't afford the parking fee. Ethan pulled into the circular drive, bypassing the valet station entirely and heading for the general parking area. A young valet in a crisp burgundy uniform started to wave him over, then seemed to think better of it when he got a good look at Ethan's vehicle. The kid's hand dropped, his professional smile cooling into something more neutral. The parking lot told its own story about Azure Crest's clientele. Mercedes, BMW, Lexus, Tesla. The automotive equivalent of a Fortune 500 company picnic. Ethan's Honda looked like it had wandered in from a different economic universe entirely. He parked between a gleaming white Range Rover and a midnight blue Porsche, both of which probably cost more than most people's houses. Grabbing his duffel and messenger bag, Ethan headed for the main entrance. His sneakers, genuine $20 specials from a discount store, not the $300 minimalist kind favored by tech billionaires slumming it, made soft sounds on the paved walkway. A couple in tennis whites passed him going the opposite direction, their conversation about the inadequacy of the resort's clay courts dying as they took in his appearance. The woman's eyes flicked from his worn clothes to his bags to his face, her expression shifting through a fascinating sequence. Curiosity, assessment, dismissal. Ethan had seen that look 1,000 times. He'd learned to find it useful. The lobby of Azure Crest Resort was designed to make an impression, and it succeeded spectacularly. The ceiling soared 30 feet overhead, all exposed beams and strategic skylights that created shifting patterns of light and shadow. The floor was Italian marble, the kind that cost more per square foot than most people's monthly rent. Everything gleamed with the kind of aggressive cleanliness that suggested an army of staff polishing surfaces throughout the night. The front desk stretched along the far wall like a sleek altar to hospitality, all dark wood and brass accents and discreet computer monitors. 4 staff members in burgundy blazers stood behind it, their posture perfect, their smiles professional. A small line had formed, 2 couples and a solo businessman, all dressed like they'd just stepped out of a yacht club directory. Ethan joined the line, setting his duffel down and pulling out his phone. He had a reservation confirmation email somewhere in his inbox, though technically he shouldn't need it. His assistant had called ahead, made all the arrangements, confirmed everything twice. Standard procedure, except Ethan had specifically requested that his name not be flagged in the system. No VIP treatment, no manager greeting, no suite upgrade or complimentary champagne. He wanted to experience Azure Crest the way a normal guest would. The line moved with bureaucratic slowness. Ethan watched the staff work, noting the little details that separated competent service from exceptional hospitality. The way the woman at the far end smiled at a young couple, genuine warmth in her eyes as she explained the resort's restaurant options. The way her colleague handed over room keys with a small flourish, making even a routine transaction feel special. Then he noticed the man at the center position, early 30s, impeccable posture, a name tag that read Jason Hartwell, front desk supervisor. Hartwell's smile was different, practiced, calibrated. It reached his mouth but stopped well short of his eyes, like he was conserving genuine emotion for situations that actually warranted it. "Welcome to Azure Crest," Hartwell said to the businessman ahead of Ethan, his voice smooth as aged whiskey. "We're so pleased to have you with us, Mr. Davidson. I see you're a platinum member of our rewards program. Let me get you checked in immediately." Fingers flew across the keyboard. The whole process took maybe 90 seconds. Room keys appeared. A leather portfolio with resort information materialized. Hartwell's smile widened fractionally as he gestured toward the elevators. "You're in the Ocean View Tower, Mr. Davidson, penthouse level. The concierge will be delighted to arrange anything you need. Enjoy your stay." Davidson nodded, collected his keys, and departed with the self-assured gait of someone accustomed to special treatment. Then it was Ethan's turn. Hartwell's eyes swept over him in a glance that lasted less than a second but communicated volumes. The smile didn't disappear. These were professionals, after all, but it definitely recalibrated, cooled, became the kind of expression you might give to someone who'd wandered into the wrong venue and would need gentle redirection. "Good afternoon," Hartwell said, his tone perfectly polite and utterly impersonal. "Welcome to Azure Crest. Do you have a reservation?" "I do." Ethan set his phone on the counter, the confirmation email pulled up on the screen. "Brooks. Ethan Brooks. Checking in for 4 nights." Hartwell's fingers moved across his keyboard, but slower now. His eyes remained on his screen, not making contact with Ethan. "I see. And when was this reservation made?" 3 weeks ago. My assistant called to confirm everything on Tuesday." More typing. A slight frown creased Hartwell's forehead. Not concern exactly, but something closer to irritation at a minor inconvenience. "I'm seeing the reservation, Mr. Brooks, but there seems to be some confusion about the room assignment." Ethan waited. Silence was often more effective than questions. "It looks like the room we had allocated has been reassigned." Hartwell's tone suggested this was somehow Ethan's fault. "Our system shows high occupancy this weekend. Several corporate events. You understand." "I understand I have a confirmed reservation," Ethan said quietly. "Made 3 weeks ago." Of course, of course." Hartwell's smile remained fixed in place like a museum exhibit. "What I'm saying is that we're working to find you alternative accommodations. It shouldn't take long. If you'd like to wait in our lobby lounge, I'm sure we'll have this sorted within the hour." The hour. Ethan kept his voice level, conversational. "I've been driving for 6 hours. I'd like to check into the room I reserved. And we're doing everything we can to accommodate that, Mr. Brooks." The way Hartwell said his name made it sound vaguely suspect, like an alias that wouldn't hold up under scrutiny. But as I'm sure you understand, during high occupancy periods, certain adjustments must be made to ensure all our guests receive the Azure Crest experience they've come to expect. Behind Ethan, someone cleared their throat. He glanced back to see a new arrival had joined the line. A man in his 50s wearing a navy blazer that probably cost more than Ethan's car, his silver hair styled with the kind of precision that required regular professional attention. The man's expression suggested he had places to be and little patience for delays. Hartwell's eyes flicked past Ethan to the new arrival, and something shifted in his posture. The professional irritation transformed into something warmer, more welcoming. "Mr. Brooks, if you could just step aside for a moment while we locate your room assignment, I can assist the next guest." "I'm not finished," Ethan said. "Sir, with all due respect, there's a line forming." Hartwell's tone had acquired an edge, sharp enough to draw blood if you weren't careful. "I've explained the situation. We're working on it. Now, if you could please—" "I have a confirmed reservation," Ethan repeated. "I was told check-in begins at 3 o'clock. It's now 3:15. I'd like to check into my room." For the first time, Hartwell made actual eye contact. His eyes were cold, professional, and utterly devoid of anything resembling empathy or concern. "Mr. Brooks, I understand you're frustrated, but creating a scene in our lobby won't expedite the process. We have policies and procedures that exist for everyone's benefit. Now, I'm going to ask you one more time to step aside so I can assist our other guests, and someone will find you when we've resolved your room situation." The lobby had gone quiet in that specific way that happens when people pretend not to be paying attention while absorbing every word. Ethan could feel eyes on him. Other guests, staff members, probably security cameras recording everything for review later. He could end this with a single sentence. 4 words. "I own this place." But that would defeat the entire purpose of being here. "Fine," Ethan said. He picked up his bags and moved toward the lobby lounge, a sunken seating area surrounded by floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the ocean. Behind him, he heard Hartwell's voice transform into something warm and welcoming. "Mr. Castellano, what a pleasure to see you again. Welcome back to Azure Crest." Ethan settled into a leather armchair that probably cost more than most people's monthly salary and watched the ocean heave against the shore in endless rhythm. His phone buzzed, a text from his assistant Sarah. "Everything okay? Do you need me to call ahead and straighten things out?" Ethan smiled and typed back, "Everything's perfect, exactly what I needed to see." Because this was the point, wasn't it? This was why he'd driven 6 hours in a car that barely had working air conditioning, why he'd worn his oldest clothes, why he'd specifically requested no special treatment. He wanted to see how Azure Crest treated people who couldn't demand immediate attention, people who didn't wear Rolex watches or arrive in cars that cost 6 figures, people who looked like they might be stretching their budget just to afford a few nights at a nice resort. Regular people. Ordinary people. People who deserved exactly the same respect as everyone else. 20 minutes passed, then 30. Ethan watched the staff at the front desk greet new arrivals with varying degrees of enthusiasm, the warmth of their welcome calibrated to some invisible metric that seemed to correlate directly with the obvious expense of each guest's clothing and luggage. A young couple in designer athletic wear received smiles and swift service. A family with 3 kids and discount store luggage got perfunctory efficiency and subtle direction toward the standard rooms. At the 45-minute mark, a woman emerged from an office behind the front desk. She moved with the kind of confidence that suggested authority, her burgundy blazer cut to emphasize competence rather than curves. Her name tag identified her as Clara Whitmore, operations manager. She was perhaps 40, with sharp features and sharper eyes that swept the lobby with the assessing gaze of someone cataloging problems that would need solving. Those eyes found Ethan, lingered for a moment, then moved on as if he were part of the furniture. Clara approached the front desk and spoke briefly with Hartwell, too quietly for Ethan to hear. Hartwell gestured toward the lounge area, toward Ethan, and said something that made Clara's expression tighten fractionally. She nodded once, straightened her blazer, and walked toward him with the measured pace of someone approaching an unpleasant but necessary task. "Mr. Brooks?" Her voice was professionally neutral, the oral equivalent of room temperature water. "I'm Clara Whitmore, the operations manager. I understand there's been some confusion with your reservation." Ethan stood, setting his phone aside. "No confusion on my end. I have a confirmed reservation for 4 nights starting today. I'd like to check in." Clara's smile was the kind that existed purely for professional purposes, utterly divorced from actual emotion. Of course, I've reviewed your reservation, and I want to assure you that we're working diligently to find appropriate accommodations. However, I'm sure you can understand that during peak season, with several corporate events happening simultaneously, our room inventory becomes quite limited. I made this reservation 3 weeks ago, Ethan said. Confirmed it earlier this week. Are you saying Azure Crest doesn't honor its reservations? Something flickered in Clara's eyes. Irritation quickly suppressed. We honor all confirmed reservations, Mr. Brooks. What I'm explaining is that due to circumstances beyond our control, the specific room we'd allocated has become unavailable. We're working to find you something comparable. How long will that take? It's difficult to say. Perhaps another hour? Maybe 2. Clara's tone suggested this was generous, that Ethan should be grateful for her attention at all. In the meantime, you're welcome to enjoy our lobby amenities. The cafe serves excellent coffee if you'd like to wait there. Ethan glanced toward the cafe she'd indicated, a small counter operation where coffee drinks started at $8 and pastries at $12. I've been waiting 45 minutes already. I'm tired. I'd like to check into the room I reserved and confirmed. And I'm doing everything I can to make that happen, Mr. Brooks. Clara's voice had acquired a slight edge, like fabric pulled too tight across a frame. But I have to work with the resources available. Surely you understand that certain situations require flexibility. Flexibility? Ethan repeated the word quietly. Like when Mr. Castellano arrived 15 minutes ago and was checked in immediately. Clara's smile didn't waver, but her eyes went cold. Mr. Castellano is a valued returning guest with elite status in our rewards program. His reservation was guaranteed, and mine wasn't? Your reservation, Clara said, each word precisely articulated, is being honored. Just not perhaps in the exact timeline you'd anticipated. Now, if you'll excuse me, I have several other matters requiring my attention. Someone will find you when we've located appropriate accommodations. She turned to leave. Miss Whitmore? Clara stopped, turned back. Her expression suggested this conversation had already lasted longer than it warranted. Yes? I'm not asking for anything special, Ethan said quietly. I'm asking for what was promised when I made this reservation. What every guest here should expect, to be treated with basic respect and to receive the service they've paid for. For a moment, something genuine crossed Clara's face. Not empathy or understanding, but naked irritation at having to continue this interaction. Mr. Brooks, I'm going to be frank with you. Azure Crest is a luxury resort that caters to a very specific clientele. We have standards to maintain, expectations to meet, and quite honestly, an image to uphold. Our regular guests, our valued guests, expect a certain atmosphere, a certain type of experience. Do you understand what I'm saying? The lobby had gone quiet again. Ethan was aware of multiple conversations dying, of heads turning subtly in their direction. Somewhere behind the front desk, a phone rang unanswered. I'm not sure I do, Ethan said. Why don't you explain it to me? Clara's smile thinned to something that barely qualified as an expression. What I'm saying, Mr. Brooks, is that sometimes people make reservations at properties that might not be the best fit for their circumstances. There are many excellent hotels along this coast, some of them quite affordable, that might better suit your needs. The Seaside Inn, for example, is just 10 miles north and offers very reasonable rates. You're suggesting I leave. I'm suggesting that perhaps you'd be more comfortable somewhere more aligned with your expectations. The words hung in the air like smoke from a gun that had just been fired. Ethan felt something cold and hard crystallize in his chest. Not anger exactly, but a kind of crystalline certainty about what was happening and what it meant. Let me make sure I understand, he said, his voice carrying in the sudden quiet of the lobby. You're telling me that because of how I look, because of what I'm wearing, because I don't have elite status in your rewards program, I don't belong at this resort, that I should take my confirmed reservation and go somewhere more suitable for people like me. Is that correct? Clara's expression didn't change, but color rose in her cheeks. I'm saying nothing of the sort. I'm simply trying to manage your expectations and suggest alternatives that might provide a more satisfactory experience given the current circumstances. The circumstances being that you've decided I'm not the right type of guest. Mr. Brooks, I think you're deliberately misunderstanding. No, Ethan interrupted, his voice still quiet but carrying an edge now, sharp as broken glass. I understand perfectly. What I'm wondering is whether this is official Azure Crest policy, that some confirmed reservations matter more than others based on how the guest looks when they walk through the door. Clara's jaw tightened. Around them, the lobby had transformed into a theater, every guest and staff member an unwilling audience to this confrontation. Phones appeared in hands, not calls, but cameras, because of course they were. This was the age where every conflict became content, every confrontation potential viral gold. I don't appreciate your tone, Clara said, her voice hardening, and I certainly don't appreciate these insinuations about how we conduct business. Azure Crest has impeccable standards. Standards, Ethan said, like making guests with confirmed reservations wait 2 hours while you scramble to find them a room, because their car wasn't expensive enough, or their clothes weren't pressed enough, or they just didn't look like they belonged in your lobby. That is not... Clara stopped, visibly collecting herself. When she spoke again, her voice was ice-cold and utterly controlled. Mr. Brooks, I've tried to be patient with you. I've tried to explain the situation in terms you might understand. But if you continue to create a disturbance in our lobby, making accusations and disrupting the experience of our other guests, I will have no choice but to ask security to escort you from the property. The threat hung in the air, unmistakable. Ethan looked at her, really looked at her, taking in the carefully pressed blazer, the precisely applied makeup, the posture that radiated authority and absolute certainty in her own rightness. He thought about the hundreds of conversations he'd had with managers at properties he owned around the world, the endless training sessions on hospitality and service excellence, the detailed policies and procedures designed to ensure every guest felt valued and welcome. And then he thought about all the ways those policies could fail when the people implementing them decided some guests deserved them more than others. I'd like to speak with the general manager, Ethan said. Clara's smile returned, cold and triumphant. The general manager is off property today, attending an industry conference. I'm the senior authority on site, which means this conversation is over. You have 2 choices, Mr. Brooks. You can wait quietly while we work on your room situation without making a scene or disrupting our other guests. Or you can leave. Those are your options. There's a third option, Ethan said quietly. And what's that? You could treat me with the same respect you'd show any other guest. You could honor my confirmed reservation. You could do your job the way it's supposed to be done, with professionalism and basic human decency, regardless of how someone looks or what kind of car they drove here in. For a moment, something flickered in Clara's eyes. Surprise, maybe, that he'd stated it so plainly. Then her expression hardened into something that looked almost like contempt. Mr. Brooks, I've worked in hospitality for 15 years. I know our clientele. I know our standards. And I know when someone is trying to create a situation they can exploit. So let me be very clear. You will wait as long as it takes for us to find you a room, if we find you one at all. And if you don't like that, there's the door. She gestured toward the entrance, the movement sharp and dismissive. The lobby was absolutely silent now, 50 people watching, phones recording. A moment that would be analyzed and discussed and shared across social media within hours, Ethan was sure. He pulled out his phone. What are you doing? Clara demanded. Making a call, Ethan said simply. If you're calling to complain to corporate, I can save you the trouble. I have full authority over operations at this property, and I'm confident my decisions will be supported. Ethan didn't respond. He pulled up his contacts, scrolled to a familiar name, and hit dial. The phone rang once, twice. Sarah, Ethan said when his assistant answered. I need you to do something for me. Of course. What do you need? Pull the full employment file for Clara Whitmore, operations manager at Azure Crest. I want her complete history, hiring date, performance reviews, any complaints filed, everything. Clara's face had gone pale. What are you... You can't just... Also, Ethan continued, his voice still perfectly calm, I want a full audit of the front desk procedures and guest service protocols at this location. How reservations are prioritized, how room assignments are made, how staff are trained to handle difficult situations. Ethan, what's going on? Sarah's voice carried concern now. Just a little quality control, Ethan said. I'll explain later. How quickly can you get me that information? 20 minutes for the employment file. The audit will take longer. 20 minutes is fine. Send it to my email. Thanks, Sarah. He ended the call and looked at Clara, whose face had transformed from pale to flushed, her professional composure cracking like ice under pressure. Who are you? She whispered. Someone who's very interested in how this resort treats its guests, Ethan said quietly. Someone who believes that respect shouldn't be contingent on wealth or status, or whether you look like you belong in a five-star lobby. Clara's phone rang, the sound cutting through the tension like a knife. She pulled it from her pocket with shaking hands, glanced at the screen, and went absolutely white. I need to take this, she said, her voice barely audible. Please do, Ethan said. Clara walked quickly toward her office, the phone pressed to her ear, her confident stride reduced to something closer to a stumble. Through the glass walls of her office, Ethan could see her talking, her face growing progressively more stricken with each passing second. At the front desk, Hartwell and the other staff members stood frozen, professional smiles abandoned, uncertainty written across their faces. The lobby remained silent, everyone watching, waiting to see what happened next. Ethan picked up his bags and sat back down in the leather armchair, perfectly calm, perfectly patient. His phone buzzed with an incoming email. He opened it, scanned the contents, and smiled faintly. Clara's employment file, complete with performance reviews, incident reports, and several complaints from guests about discriminatory treatment, all carefully documented, all filed away, all ignored by management because her guest satisfaction scores had remained high among the right kind of guests. The office door opened. Clara emerged, her face the color of old parchment, her hands visibly trembling. She walked toward Ethan like someone approaching the gallows, each step seeming to require tremendous effort. When she reached him, she stopped, opened her mouth, closed it again. Words seemed to fail her entirely. Yes? Ethan prompted gently. I've been informed, Clara said, each word emerging like a physical object she had to force out, that I've made a serious error in judgment. Have you? She swallowed hard. I apologize for any inconvenience or disrespect you experienced. Your room is ready immediately. If you'll follow me, I'll personally ensure you're settled in. Ethan stood slowly, picking up his bags. That won't be necessary. I'm sure the front desk can handle check-in from here. Please, Clara whispered. You're supposed to treat every guest with respect, Ethan said quietly. From the moment they walk through the door until the moment they leave, regardless of how they look, what they wear, or what kind of car they drive. That's the job. That's always been the job. Tears were forming in Clara's eyes now, her professional armor completely shattered. I know, I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. Don't apologize to me, Ethan said. Apologize to every guest you've ever treated like they didn't belong because they didn't meet your arbitrary standards of what a valued guest should look like. He walked past her toward the front desk, where Hartwell stood frozen, his face the color of spoiled milk. I believe I'm ready to check in now, Ethan said quietly. Hartwell's hands shook as he typed. The confident efficiency of earlier completely evaporated. Of course, Mr. Brooks, right away. Your room is ready. Premium Ocean View Suite, complimentary upgrade, and please, anything you need, anything at all. Just the room I reserved, Ethan interrupted. Nothing more, nothing less. Just what every guest should receive, what they've paid for, what they've been promised. The room keys appeared on the counter like an offering at an altar. Ethan collected them and turned toward the elevators, aware of 50 pairs of eyes tracking his movement, aware of the whispered conversations already beginning, aware that in offices behind the scenes, phones were ringing and emails were flying, and the machinery of corporate consequence was grinding into motion. But that could wait until tomorrow. Tonight, he just wanted to rest in a room overlooking the ocean, look at his son's drawing, and think about all the changes that would need to be made to ensure this never happened to anyone else. The elevator doors closed on a lobby full of stunned faces and unanswered questions. And Ethan Brooks, owner of Azure Crest Resort and 17 other luxury properties around the world, finally allowed himself a small, tired smile. Because sometimes the most powerful thing you could do was simply refuse to accept being treated as less than human. Sometimes the most radical act was demanding basic respect. And sometimes, just sometimes, accountability arrived in the form of a quiet man in worn clothes who knew exactly who he was, regardless of who anyone else thought he should be. The suite was everything Azure Crest promised in its glossy brochures: floor-to-ceiling windows framing an endless expanse of ocean, furniture that managed to be both elegant and comfortable, a bathroom larger than some studio apartments. Ethan set his duffel bag on the king-sized bed and stood for a moment, simply breathing, letting the tension of the past hour drain from his shoulders. His phone buzzed. Sarah again. I'm getting calls from the resort. Clara Whitmore's supervisor wants to know what happened. Should I loop in legal? Ethan typed back. Not yet. Let me handle this my way. I'll call you in the morning. You're sure you're okay? I'm fine. Thanks for having my back. Always. He set the phone on the nightstand and walked to the window. The sun was beginning its descent toward the horizon, painting the sky in shades of amber and rose. Somewhere down on the beach, a family was building sandcastles while waves lapped at their feet. The father, younger than Ethan, shirtless and sunburned, laughed as his daughter dumped a bucket of wet sand on his head. Ethan thought of Marcus, who would arrive tomorrow afternoon with Ethan's mother. 3 days of actual vacation, of being a dad instead of a CEO, of building sandcastles and collecting shells, and maybe teaching his son to body surf in the gentle waves. But first, there was work to do. He pulled out his laptop and spent the next 2 hours going through Azure Crest's operational reports, guest satisfaction surveys, and employee reviews. The picture that emerged was troubling, but not surprising. High marks for ambiance, amenities, and service, but only from certain demographics. Complaints from guests who didn't fit the luxury resort profile were consistently dismissed or attributed to unrealistic expectations. Staff turnover was high in guest-facing positions, particularly among employees who'd raised concerns about discriminatory practices. Clara Whitmore's name appeared repeatedly, always in the same context: efficient, professional, excellent at managing the resort's image and maintaining standards that kept their most affluent guests happy. Translation: she was very good at making sure the wrong kind of people didn't feel welcome. A knock at the door interrupted his reading. Ethan opened it to find a young woman in the burgundy uniform, holding a silver tray with a bottle of champagne and a card. "Compliments of the management, Mr. Brooks," she said, her voice carefully neutral. "With our sincerest apologies for any inconvenience during check-in." "What's your name?" Ethan asked. She blinked, surprised. "Maria, sir." "How long have you worked here, Maria?" 8 months. Do you like it?" The question clearly caught her off guard. Her professional mask slipped, revealing uncertainty underneath. It's a good job, sir. The pay is decent. And the benefits? That's not what I asked." Maria's eyes darted down the hallway, checking for supervisors or colleagues. When she spoke again, her voice was quieter. "Most days, yes. Some days." She trailed off, clearly thinking better of whatever she'd been about to say. "Some days it's hard to watch how certain guests get treated differently than others," Ethan suggested gently. Her eyes widened. "I didn't say that, sir." "You didn't have to." Ethan took the champagne and set it on the table inside. "Tell me something, Maria. If someone who looked like me walked into the lobby tomorrow, what would happen?" "I don't understand, sir." "Yes, you do. Regular clothes, regular car, no elite status, no designer luggage. What would happen to that person?" Maria's face was a study in internal conflict, the desire to be honest warring with the need to protect her job. "It would depend on who was working the desk," she said finally. "Some of our staff treat everyone the same, but others—" She stopped again, shaking her head. "I should go, sir. Is there anything else you need?" "Just your honesty, and you can drop the sir. My name's Ethan." "I can't, that's not—" "I know, professional standards." Ethan smiled. "Thank you for bringing the champagne, Maria. One more question before you go. If you could change one thing about how this resort operates, what would it be?" She looked at him for a long moment, clearly trying to figure out if this was some kind of test. "I'd make sure everyone felt welcome," she said quietly. "Rich, poor, dressed up, dressed down, it shouldn't matter. Everyone's paying to be here. Everyone deserves to feel like they belong." "I agree completely," Ethan said. Have a good evening, Maria. She left, and Ethan returned to his laptop. He drafted an email to Sarah with specific instructions. Tomorrow morning, he wanted a staff meeting with every guest-facing employee at Azure Crest. Not optional. Everyone from housekeeping to front desk to restaurant servers. He wanted to talk to them, to hear their experiences, to understand the culture that had developed at his resort. And then he wanted to change it. Sleep came easier than he'd expected, the sound of waves through the cracked balcony door lulling him into dreams of sandcastles and his son's laughter. Morning arrived with pale light and the cry of seagulls. Ethan ordered room service for breakfast, not because he couldn't go to the restaurant, but because he wanted to see how that service worked, how he'd be treated when someone arrived at his door with a tray of food. The knock came precisely on time. Ethan opened the door to find a young man, maybe 25, with kind eyes and a nervous smile. "Good morning, Mr. Brooks. Breakfast is served." He rolled the cart into the room with practiced efficiency, set up the dishes on the balcony table, and stepped back. "Is there anything else I can get for you?" "What's your name?" "David, sir." "Sit down for a minute, David." The young man's eyes went wide with alarm. "Sir, I can't. That's against policy. I'm supposed to deliver the food and leave. If my supervisor—" "Your supervisor won't know unless you tell them. Please, just for a minute." David sat, perched on the edge of the chair like a bird ready to take flight at the first sign of danger, his hands twisted in his lap. "Tell me about working here," Ethan said. "The truth, not the employee handbook version." "I don't understand what you want me to say, sir." "I want to know if you're happy here, if you feel respected, if the guests treat you well." David was quiet for a long moment, staring at his hands. "Most guests are fine," he said finally. "Some are really generous, really kind. They ask about my day, they tip well, they treat me like I'm a person instead of just furniture that talks. And the others? The others act like I'm invisible. Or worse, like I'm something inconvenient they have to tolerate. They snap their fingers, they don't say please or thank you, they complain about everything and make sure everyone knows it's somehow my fault." He looked up, met Ethan's eyes. "But that's just hospitality, right? You smile, you serve, you don't take it personally." "Except it is personal," Ethan said quietly. "Because you're a person, not a servant. There's a difference between doing your job and being treated like you're less than human." David's expression suggested he'd never heard a guest articulate this before. "Why are you asking me this, sir?" "Because I'm trying to understand what kind of place this really is. Not what the brochures say or what the reviews claim. What it actually feels like to work here, to be here, to exist in this space." "Are you a journalist or something?" Ethan smiled. "Or something. Tell me, David, have you ever seen the staff treat guests differently based on how they look?" The question hung in the air like smoke. David's face went carefully neutral. "I really should get back to work, sir." "You've seen it happen." "I didn't say that." "You didn't have to." Ethan poured coffee from the carafe on the tray, the rich aroma filling the morning air. "What if I told you that was about to change? That the way things work here, the unspoken rules about who deserves respect and who doesn't, what if all of that was about to be challenged?" "I'd say that sounds nice in theory," David replied, standing. "But in practice, places like this don't change. The people with money make the rules, and the rest of us just try to get through our shifts without getting written up or fired." "You sound like you've thought about this." "I've worked in hospitality for 7 years, sir. I've thought about it a lot." David moved toward the door, then paused. "Can I ask you something?" "Why do you care? You're clearly someone who can afford to stay here, someone who got a sweet upgrade and champagne sent to your room. The system works for people like you. Why question it?" "Because a system that only works for some people is broken," Ethan said simply. "And broken things should be fixed." David studied him for a moment, something like hope flickering in his eyes before professional caution extinguished it. "Well, I hope you succeed, whoever you are. Enjoy your breakfast, sir." After he left, Ethan stood on the balcony and ate slowly, watching the resort come to life below. Guests emerged from their rooms in designer athletic wear, heading for yoga classes and tennis courts. Groundskeepers moved through the gardens with quiet efficiency, invisible to the people enjoying the beauty they maintained. A young couple argued near the pool, their voices carrying on the morning breeze, something about the cost of cabana rentals and whether it was worth the expense. His phone rang. Sarah. "Morning," Ethan said. "You're up early?" "I've been up since 4, Ethan. We have a situation." "What kind of situation?" Clara Whitmore filed a formal complaint with HR. She's claiming you harassed her yesterday, that you made threats, that you abused your position to intimidate her. Ethan laughed, the sound carrying across the balcony. She's trying to get ahead of it. Smart, actually. What's her version of events? That you arrived making unreasonable demands, that you became verbally aggressive when she tried to explain standard procedures, and that you used your ownership status to threaten her job security because she didn't provide immediate VIP treatment. And what did you tell HR? Nothing yet. I wanted to talk to you first. But Ethan, she's also claiming the lobby incident was recorded by guest cell phones and that the videos make you look aggressive. She's painting herself as the victim of a wealthy owner who doesn't understand operational realities. Do we have security footage from the lobby? Already requested it. Should have it within the hour. Yes. Good. Let HR know I'll be providing a full statement, including documentation of multiple guest complaints about discriminatory treatment under Clara's management. Also, I want that staff meeting this morning, 10 o'clock, everyone. Already scheduled. The staff is nervous. Word's gotten around about what happened. Good. They should be thinking about it. See you at 10. Ethan spent the next hour reviewing security footage Sarah emailed him. The video told the story clearly. His calm requests met with dismissiveness, Clara's barely concealed contempt, the way staff jumped to serve other guests while he waited. The audio was particularly damning, catching Clara's suggestion that he'd be more comfortable at a more affordable property. At 9:45, Ethan walked downstairs dressed in the same worn jeans and faded jacket from yesterday. He wanted the staff to see him exactly as he was, not transformed into some corporate executive in an expensive suit. The meeting was scheduled in the resort's largest conference room, a space typically used for corporate retreats and wedding receptions. When Ethan arrived, he found it packed with nervous-looking employees in burgundy uniforms, housekeepers, front desk staff, servers, groundskeepers, kitchen workers, easily 200 people crammed into a space designed for half that. At the front of the room stood Sarah, her tablet in hand, flanked by the resort's assistant manager and head of human resources. Clara Whitmore sat in the front row, her spine rigid, her face carefully composed into professional neutrality. The room went silent when Ethan entered. He walked to the front without preamble, shaking Sarah's hand and nodding to the other executives. Then he turned to face the assembled staff. "Good morning," he said simply. "My name is Ethan Brooks. I own this resort." The silence deepened, became something almost physical. 200 pairs of eyes fixed on him with varying expressions: shock, curiosity, fear, confusion. "Yesterday afternoon," Ethan continued, "I checked into Azure Crest as a regular guest. I didn't announce who I was. I didn't ask for special treatment. I wanted to experience this resort the way any ordinary person would. Someone who'd saved up for a special vacation, who'd made a reservation weeks in advance, who showed up tired and hoping for a warm welcome." He paused, let that sink in. "Instead, I was ignored, dismissed, and eventually told that I might be more comfortable at a cheaper hotel because I didn't fit the image this resort wants to project. I was treated like I didn't belong because of how I looked, what I wore, and the car I drove, and when I asked for basic respect, I was threatened with removal by security." Murmurs rippled through the crowd. Staff members exchanged glances. Clara's face had gone pale. Now I could stand here and talk about how disappointed I am, how this isn't what Azure Crest represents, how we're better than this. But that would be a lie. Ethan's voice remained calm, conversational, but carried clear authority. Because the truth is, this is exactly what Azure Crest has become under current management. A place where dignity is conditional, where respect depends on wealth, where some guests matter more than others. He pulled out his phone, tapped a few times, and the large screen behind him flickered to life with a spreadsheet. These are guest complaints from the past 18 months, 247 of them, Every single one from guests who felt discriminated against, dismissed, or disrespected because they didn't meet some arbitrary standard of what a luxury resort guest should look like. He scrolled through the data. African American family told the pool area was at capacity when they could clearly see empty loungers. Elderly couple on a fixed income questioned repeatedly about how they were paying for their room. Young couple arriving on motorcycles told to use the service entrance instead of the main lobby. Single mother with 3 kids asked if she was sure she could afford the resort's restaurant. The room was absolutely silent now. Every one of these complaints was filed, Ethan continued. Every one was documented, and every single one was dismissed as a misunderstanding or attributed to the guests' unrealistic expectations, because it was easier to blame the guests than to examine the culture we'd created. He turned to face Clara directly. Ms. Whitmore, would you like to explain to your colleagues why a confirmed reservation for someone who didn't look wealthy enough was treated as negotiable? Clara stood, her composure cracking but not breaking entirely. Mr. Brooks, with all due respect, running a luxury resort requires maintaining certain standards. Certain standards, Ethan interrupted quietly, or certain prejudices? That's not fair. I've dedicated 15 years to hospitality. I've maintained guest satisfaction scores above 90%. Among guests you deemed worthy of satisfaction. What about the others, Clara? The ones who didn't wear Rolex watches or arrive in Mercedes? Where are their satisfaction scores? Clara's mouth opened, closed. No words came. Ethan turned back to the assembled staff. Here's the truth. Every person who makes a reservation at this resort, who pays our rates, who chooses to spend their hard-earned money here, they all deserve the same level of respect and service. The billionaire in the penthouse and the school teacher in a standard room, the CEO in a tailored suit and the mechanic in work boots. Everyone. He began to pace, his voice rising slightly with conviction. Some of you have witnessed this discrimination. Some of you have participated in it, maybe without even realizing what you were doing. And some of you have spoken up about it and been told to mind your own business, that this is just how things work at a 5-star resort. Heads nodded throughout the room. People who'd been staring at the floor met his eyes. That ends today, Ethan said firmly. As of this moment, Azure Crest has new policies. 1. Every confirmed reservation is honored, no exceptions based on appearance or perceived wealth. 2. Every guest is greeted with the same warmth and professionalism from the moment they arrive until they leave. 3. Any employee caught discriminating against guests based on appearance, race, age, or economic status will be terminated immediately. Not disciplined, not retrained. Terminated. The weight of those words settled over the room like a physical presence. But I'm not just interested in punishment, Ethan continued, his tone softening. I want to understand how we got here. How a company founded on principles of hospitality and service drifted into this kind of behavior. So I'm asking, anyone who has something to say, who's witnessed problems, who has ideas about how to fix this, I want to hear from you. For a long moment, nobody moved. Then, slowly, a hand rose in the back of the room. Maria, the young woman who delivered champagne to his room. Yes, Ethan said. Maria stood, her voice trembling slightly. Mr. Brooks, I've worked here for 8 months. And in that time, I've seen a lot of things that didn't feel right. But when I asked my supervisor about it, I was told that luxury hospitality means catering to our most valuable guests, that we should focus our attention on the people who can afford to come back, who can afford to spend money in our restaurants and spa. Who told you that? Ethan asked. Maria's eyes flicked to Clara, then away. It was in our training, not officially, but there were examples given. Ways to identify high-value guests versus budget travelers. We were taught to prioritize our time accordingly. Another hand went up. David, the room service attendant. I've been here 3 years, he said, standing. And I've watched good people get fired for treating the wrong guests too well. There was a woman in housekeeping who spent extra time helping an elderly couple who were struggling with their luggage. Her supervisor wrote her up for inefficiency. She quit 2 weeks later because she couldn't stand the culture anymore. More hands rose. The floodgates had opened. A woman in her 50s, wearing a housekeeping supervisor uniform. I've been told explicitly to prioritize rooms for guests with higher spending patterns. If someone's only paying for a basic room and not using resort services, they get cleaned last, get fewer amenities, less attention. A young man from the restaurant staff. We're trained to recognize luxury brands, expensive watches, designer clothes. Those guests get seated first, get more attentive service, get offered premium menu items. Everyone else gets the standard treatment. The stories poured out, each one adding another piece to the picture of a culture that had systematically devalued human dignity in favor of profit margins and elite satisfaction. Ethan listened to all of it, his expression grave. When the voices finally quieted, he turned to Clara. Did you create this culture? Clara's face was streaked with tears now, her professional composure completely shattered. I was doing my job. I was meeting expectations set by corporate, by ownership, by who? Ethan demanded. Who told you to treat people like they were less than human if they didn't meet arbitrary wealth standards? It's industry standard. Clara's voice rose, defensive and desperate. Every luxury resort operates this way. We can't provide five-star service to everyone. The economics don't work. We have to focus on our core clientele, the guests who generate revenue, who come back year after year, at the expense of basic human decency? It's not about decency, it's about business. They're the same thing, Ethan said quietly. The moment you separate business from decency, from treating people with respect regardless of their economic status, you've lost the plot entirely. You've built a machine that generates profit while destroying dignity, and you've convinced yourself that's just how the world works. Clara sank back into her chair, her hands covering her face. Ethan addressed the room again. I take responsibility for this. As owner, I should have been paying closer attention. I should have investigated when guest complaints came in. I should have created systems to prevent this kind of culture from developing. That's on me. He paused, let that acknowledgement sit. But from this moment forward, Azure Crest operates differently. We're going to retrain every employee in actual hospitality, not the economics of maximizing revenue per guest, but the ethics of treating every human being who walks through our doors with respect and dignity. We're going to create real accountability systems where complaints are investigated, not dismissed. And we're going to make it crystal clear that discrimination in any form is grounds for immediate termination. Sarah stepped forward with her tablet. We've prepared new training materials and policy documents. Every employee will go through refresher training over the next 2 weeks. Those who can't or won't adjust to the new standards will be given the opportunity to seek employment elsewhere. Ethan nodded. This isn't optional. This is who we are now, who we should have been all along. He looked directly at Clara. Ms. Whitmore, effective immediately, you're suspended pending a full investigation into your management practices. You'll receive your full salary during this period, and you'll have the opportunity to respond to all allegations. But I want to be clear, slapping a guest, threatening them with security, and suggesting they'd be more comfortable at a cheaper hotel, those actions alone would justify termination. The only question is whether there's any context I'm missing that would explain, though not excuse, your behavior. Claire's voice was barely a whisper. There's nothing to explain. I was wrong. I'm sorry. Don't apologize to me, Ethan said gently. Apologize to every guest you made feel unwelcome, every staff member you trained to value profit over people, every person who walked through our doors hoping for a warm welcome and received cold assessment instead. He turned back to the assembled staff. Questions? Dozens of hands shot up. The first question came from a woman near the middle of the room, her burgundy blazer marking her as front desk staff. She stood with visible nervousness, her voice wavering as she spoke. Mr. Brooks, what about the guests who actually do expect special treatment? The ones who've been coming here for years and are used to being prioritized? Won't they complain if we treat everyone the same? Ethan nodded, appreciating the honesty. That's a fair question. And yes, some guests will complain. Some will threaten to take their business elsewhere. Some will leave negative reviews saying the resort has lost its exclusivity or lowered its standards, and we're going to let them. A ripple of shock moved through the room. Because here's what those guests are really saying, Ethan continued. They're saying that their comfort depends on other people being made uncomfortable, that their sense of being special requires someone else to be made to feel less than. That's not hospitality, that's hierarchy. and we're not in the business of maintaining hierarchies anymore. He gestured to Sarah, who pulled up another slide on the screen. This one showed revenue projections, occupancy rates, and market analysis. I've run the numbers, Ethan said. Yes, we might lose some high-spending guests who can't adjust to being treated the same as everyone else. But you know what we'll gain? Loyalty from people who've never felt truly welcome at a luxury resort before. Referrals from guests who'll tell their friends about the five-star property that actually treated them like human beings. Market share among demographics we've been systematically excluding. A man in chef's whites raised his hand. What about the economics of it, though? If we're spending the same amount of time and attention on every guest regardless of what they're spending, doesn't that cut into profitability? Short-term, maybe, Ethan acknowledged. Long-term, we'll be more profitable than ever. Because we'll have something most luxury resorts don't, genuine customer loyalty built on respect rather than exclusivity. People will come here not because they can flaunt their status, but because they know they'll be treated with dignity. That's a sustainable business model. The other way is a race to the bottom, competing for an ever-shrinking pool of people who equate wealth with worth. More hands went up. Ethan pointed to a young woman in housekeeping staff uniform. Sir, some of us have complained about these issues before and been told to stay in our lane, that we don't understand the bigger picture. How do we know this time will be different? Because this time, I'm the one saying it, Ethan replied. And I sign everyone's paychecks, including the people who told you to stay in your lane. But more than that, I'm creating a direct reporting line. Any employee who witnesses discrimination, who sees guests being treated differently based on appearance or perceived wealth, can report it directly to corporate HR. No going through your supervisor, no fear of retaliation, anonymous if you want it to be, and every report will be investigated. He paused, making eye contact with people throughout the room. I'm also instituting a policy that might surprise you. Any employee who refuses to participate in discriminatory practices, even if ordered to do so by a supervisor, will be protected and commended. You will not be punished for doing the right thing, ever. David, the room service attendant, stood again. Mr. Brooks, I appreciate everything you're saying. But can I be honest? A lot of us have worked in this industry a long time. We've heard owners and executives give inspiring speeches about values and culture before. Then nothing actually changes because the people implementing the policies are the same people who benefited from the old system. How do we know this isn't just talk? The question hung in the air, and Ethan could see heads nodding throughout the room. It was the question they were all thinking, but most were too afraid to ask. You're right to be skeptical, Ethan said. Words are cheap. So let me give you actions instead. Effective immediately, I'm terminating the current incentive structure for management that rewards maximizing revenue per guest. Instead, we're implementing new metrics based on overall guest satisfaction across all demographics, employee retention and satisfaction, and adherence to our new Dignity First policies. Sarah brought up another slide showing the new compensation structure. Management bonuses will be tied to these metrics, Ethan continued. If wealthy guests are happy, but working-class guests are dissatisfied, no bonus. If staff turnover is high because the culture is toxic, no bonus. If we receive credible complaints about discrimination, no bonus. We're aligning financial incentives with actual values. He pointed to another section of the slide. Additionally, I'm creating an employee committee, volunteer positions, rotating membership, that will have direct input into policy decisions. You'll review proposed changes, provide feedback on implementation, and have a real voice in how this resort operates. Not symbolic, not token, real power to shape the culture here. A woman who'd been silent until now stood near the back. Her name tag identified her as Rosa, Laundry Services. She spoke with a thick accent, her English careful but clear. Mr. Brooks, I work in the laundry. I don't see guests usually, but I see their clothes, their sheets, their towels, and I can tell you, she paused, seeming to gather courage, I can tell you that rich people's dirt is the same as poor people's dirt. Blood, sweat, wine stains, sand, it all comes out the same in the wash. Everyone is equal when they're sleeping, when they're bleeding, when they're human. I think maybe the front desk should remember this too. The room erupted in spontaneous applause. Rosa sat down quickly, her face flushed, but Ethan saw the small smile on her lips. Rosa just articulated our new philosophy better than I ever could, Ethan said when the applause died down. Everyone is equal in their humanity. That's not a slogan. That's a fact. And starting today, it's how we operate. He checked his watch. They'd been at this for over an hour, but the questions kept coming, each one revealing another layer of dysfunction that had calcified into standard practice. A bellhop asked about the unwritten rule that luggage for budget travelers could wait, while luxury guests received immediate attention. A spa attendant described being reprimanded for spending too much time with a client who'd only booked a basic massage instead of the premium package. A valet shared that they'd been trained to judge guests by their vehicles and adjust their service accordingly. Ethan listened to all of it, occasionally asking clarifying questions, always treating each concern with serious attention. Sarah took notes on her tablet, flagging issues for immediate policy changes. Finally, after nearly 2 hours, the questions slowed. Ethan could see exhaustion and something like cautious hope on the faces before him. "Last question," he said, pointing to Jason Hartwell, the front desk supervisor who'd dismissed him yesterday. Hartwell stood slowly, his face pale. "Mr. Brooks, I owe you an apology. What I did yesterday was inexcusable. I saw you as someone who didn't belong here, and I treated you accordingly. I was wrong, and I'm sorry." "Do you understand why you were wrong?" Ethan asked. Hartwell swallowed hard. "Because everyone who makes a reservation deserves respect. Because my job is to serve guests, not judge them. Because I let assumptions about wealth determine how I treated another human being. And if I hadn't turned out to be the owner, if I'd just been a regular guy who'd saved up for a vacation, would your behavior have been any less wrong?" "No, sir. It would have been exactly as wrong." Ethan nodded. "Then we understand each other. Jason, you're suspended for 1 week without pay. Use that time to think about whether you can commit to our new standards. If you can, you'll have a job here when you return. If you can't, we'll help you find employment elsewhere. No hard feelings either way. But this is your choice." "I can commit, sir. I will commit." "Then I'll see you in a week." Ethan addressed the full room one final time. "This meeting is adjourned. You all have jobs to do, and I've kept you long enough. But remember, as of today, Azure Crest stands for something different. We're not just a luxury resort. We're a place where every person, regardless of wealth or status, can expect to be treated with dignity and respect. That's our brand now. That's who we are. Anyone who can't live with that should start looking for work elsewhere." The staff filed out slowly, their conversation subdued but animated. Ethan caught fragments as they passed: surprise, hope, skepticism, excitement, all swirling together into the complex reaction of people who'd been promised change before and learned not to trust it. When the room had cleared except for Sarah and the HR director, Ethan sank into a chair. "Well," Sarah said, "that was something." "Think they believed me?" "Some did, some didn't. Most are in wait-and-see mode, which is probably smart." She scrolled through her notes. "We've got about 40 policy changes to implement based on what came up in that meeting. I'll have drafts ready by tomorrow." The HR director, a woman named Patricia Chen, spoke up. "Mr. Brooks, I need to be frank with you. What you're proposing, it's admirable, but it's going to be messy. We'll lose staff who can't or won't adjust. We'll lose guests who liked things the way they were. Revenue will probably dip before it recovers. Are you prepared for that?" "I am," Ethan said. "Are you?" Patricia smiled slightly. "I've been waiting 15 years for someone to actually mean it when they talk about values over profits. So yes, I'm prepared. I'm also going to hold you to every promise you made in there." "Please do." After they left, Ethan sat alone in the conference room for a long time, staring at the ocean visible through the floor-to-ceiling windows. His phone buzzed with incoming messages. His mother confirming she and Marcus would arrive around 2, several board members requesting urgent calls about the situation at Azure Crest, his lawyer wanting to discuss liability issues related to Clara's suspension. All of it could wait. He walked out through the lobby, which had transformed since yesterday. Staff moved with the same professional efficiency, but there was something different in the air: a tension, an awareness, a sense that everyone was being watched and evaluated. Several employees made eye contact as he passed, offering small nods or cautious smiles. Outside, the resort grounds sparkled in the late morning sun. Guests lounged by the pool, played tennis on immaculate courts, strolled through gardens that looked like they'd been manicured by obsessive artists. Everything gleamed with the promise of luxury, of escape, of a world where money could buy perfection. But Ethan knew the truth. Money could buy comfort, convenience, beautiful spaces. It couldn't buy dignity. It couldn't buy genuine respect. Those things had to be freely given, human to human, regardless of economic equations or profit margins. He found himself walking toward the beach, drawn by the endless rhythm of waves. A few guests dotted the sand, a couple doing yoga near the water, kids building an elaborate castle, an elderly man sitting alone with a book. No one paid Ethan any attention in his worn clothes and faded jacket. He was invisible here, just another body moving through space. Perfect. He sat down in the sand, pulled out his phone, and called his son. Marcus answered on the second ring, his 7-year-old voice bright with excitement. "Dad, Grandma says we're leaving soon. She says the resort has a pool and a beach, and I can learn to swim in the ocean." "All true," Ethan said, his heart lightening at the pure joy in his son's voice. "You ready for some serious sandcastle construction?" "I've been practicing. Grandma bought me new buckets and everything." "That's my boy. Listen, Marcus, when you get here, I need you to do something for me." "What?" "I need you to treat everyone you meet with kindness. The people who work here, the other guests, everyone. Can you do that?" "I always do, Dad. You taught me that." "I know, but sometimes grown-ups forget, so I need you to remind me, okay? If you ever see me treating someone without respect, I need you to call me out on it." Marcus was quiet for a moment. "Is everything okay, Dad? You sound weird." "Everything's fine, better than fine. I'm just remembering what's important." "Okay. Hey, Dad, can we get ice cream when I get there?" "As much as you want, buddy. See you soon." After hanging up, Ethan sat watching the waves for a while longer. A shadow fell across the sand beside him, and he looked up to find Maria, the young woman from room service, standing there in her uniform. "Mr. Brooks, I'm sorry to interrupt your break, but I wanted to say something." "Sit," Ethan offered, gesturing to the sand beside him. Maria sat carefully, smoothing her uniform skirt. "I just wanted to say thank you for what you did this morning, for listening, for actually seeming to care about what we had to say." "You're welcome, but I should be thanking you. You were the first person brave enough to speak up." "I almost didn't. I was terrified I'd lose my job." "For telling the truth?" "For making waves. For not going along with how things are." She picked up a handful of sand, let it sift through her fingers. "My mom works as a housekeeper at a hotel in Los Angeles. She's worked there for 20 years, and she tells me stories about how guests treat her, like she's invisible, like she's not even human. I started working here thinking it would be different because it's a luxury resort, because the guests are educated, wealthy, supposedly sophisticated. But it was worse in some ways. At least at my mom's hotel, people don't pretend their rudeness is actually some kind of refined standard." Ethan watched her face as she spoke, seeing the frustration and disappointment there. "I got into hospitality because I wanted to make people happy," Maria continued. "I wanted to create experiences, to be part of someone's best memories. But instead, I learned that my job was to be deferential to rich people and dismissive to everyone else. It made me hate coming to work." "Will you stay?" Ethan asked, "now that things are changing?" "I don't know yet. I want to believe it'll be different, but I've been disappointed before." She met his eyes. "Can I ask you something honestly?" "Please." "Why do you care so much? You're the owner. You could have shown up in a suit, been treated like royalty, enjoyed your stay, and never known how regular people get treated here. Why put yourself through what happened yesterday?" Ethan was quiet for a moment, organizing his thoughts. "My wife died 3 years ago. Cancer. In her last weeks, we were in and out of hospitals constantly, and I saw how differently we were treated based on what waiting room we were in, what insurance we had, how we were dressed. In the charity ward, nurses and doctors treated us like we were wasting their time. In the private wing, we were suddenly worth caring about. Same disease, same pain, same fear, but different treatment based on arbitrary economic factors." Maria's eyes had filled with tears. "She told me something the week before she died," Ethan continued. "She said that suffering shows you who people really are. both the person suffering and the people around them. She said that how we treat people when they're vulnerable, when they have nothing to offer us in return, that's the measure of our character. He paused, his throat tight with the memory. I've spent 3 years trying to live up to that, trying to make sure the companies I own, the people I employ, the systems I create, they all reflect that principle, that human dignity isn't negotiable. I'm sorry about your wife, Maria said softly. Thank you. She would have liked you. She always appreciated people who spoke truth even when it was hard. They sat in companionable silence for a while, watching the waves. Then Maria stood, brushing sand from her uniform. I think I'll stay, she said. At least for a while. See if you really mean all the things you said this morning. I do mean them. Then I'll hold you to it, Mr. Brooks. After she left, Ethan remained on the beach, letting the sun warm his face and the sound of waves calm his mind. His phone buzzed again, Sarah with an update that Clara had formally resigned rather than face the investigation, that 2 other managers had also submitted resignations, that guest satisfaction surveys were being revised to include specific questions about equal treatment and respect. Progress, in other words. The kind that came with casualties and complications, but moved forward nonetheless. Around 1 o'clock, Ethan walked back toward the resort, stopping by the pool area on his way. A scene was unfolding near the cabanas that made him pause. A family, mother, father, 3 kids ranging from maybe 5 to 12, stood near the pool entrance looking uncomfortable. They were dressed in regular department store swimwear, nothing designer, nothing expensive. The kids carried inflatable toys from a dollar store, not the sophisticated pool equipment favored by Azure Crest's usual clientele. A pool attendant, young guy in his 20s, approached them with a clipboard. Ethan couldn't hear the conversation from where he stood, but he could read body language. The attendant's posture was welcoming, his smile genuine. He gestured toward the cabanas, explaining something. The mother shook her head, probably declining because of the cost, and the attendant nodded, understanding, then pointed toward the regular lounge chairs with the same enthusiasm he'd shown for the premium options. He helped the kids find chairs together, brought them towels without being asked, and treated them with the exact same attentiveness Ethan had watched him give a wealthy couple in designer swimwear earlier. It was a small thing, barely noticeable unless you were looking for it, but it was everything. Ethan caught the attendant's eye as the family settled in, their initial discomfort melting into relaxation and joy. The young man's name tag read Chris. Ethan made a mental note to find out his full name to make sure he was recognized for getting it right. Because that was the thing about culture change. It wasn't just about the big dramatic moments, the speeches and policy announcements and structural reforms. It was about 10,000 small moments like this one, where individual people made individual choices to treat other people with dignity and respect. His phone rang. His mother. Ethan, we're about 20 minutes away. Marcus is bouncing in his seat like a kangaroo on espresso. Where should we meet you? I'll be in the lobby. Can't wait to see you both. Ethan, everything okay? You sound different. Everything's good, Mom. Really good. See you soon. He walked into the lobby with 15 minutes to spare, settling into the same chair where he'd waited yesterday. The front desk staff were different today. The day shift had ended, evening crew taking over. But he noticed the change in atmosphere immediately. Staff made eye contact with every guest who entered, regardless of appearance. Smiles seemed more genuine, less calculated. Or maybe he was just projecting hope onto observed behavior. A woman approached the desk carrying a baby, a toddler clinging to her leg, obvious exhaustion in every line of her body. She wore yoga pants and a t-shirt that had seen better days, her hair pulled back in a practical ponytail. Yesterday, Ethan suspected she would have been made to wait while better-dressed guests were served first. Today, the front desk clerk, a woman Ethan didn't recognize from yesterday's meeting, greeted her with immediate warmth. Welcome to Azure Crest. You must be Mrs. Patterson. We have your room ready, and I've made sure you're close to the elevator since I see you have little ones with you. The relief on the young mother's face was profound. Thank you. It's been a long drive. I can imagine. Let me get you checked in quickly so you can get these sweet babies settled. Are you celebrating anything special? Our anniversary. First real vacation since the kids were born. How wonderful! Congratulations! I'm going to send up some sparkling cider and fresh fruit, compliments of the resort. And if you need anything at all, anything, please don't hesitate to call the front desk. We're here to make your stay special." Ethan watched the interaction with something approaching satisfaction. Small victory, but genuine. One family made to feel welcome instead of judged. One moment of basic human kindness in a place that had forgotten how to offer it freely. The lobby doors opened, and Marcus came barreling through like a small joy-powered missile, his grandmother following at a more sedate pace. The 7-year-old's eyes went wide, taking in the soaring ceiling, the marble floors, the ocean view visible through the windows. Then he spotted Ethan and ran full speed across the lobby, launching himself into his father's arms with complete confidence that he'd be caught. Ethan caught him, holding tight, breathing in the familiar scent of his son's shampoo and the indefinable essence that was purely Marcus. For just a moment, the weight of the past 2 days, the confrontation, the staff meeting, the structural reforms that still needed implementing, all of it faded into background noise. "Dad, this place is amazing. Can we go swimming right now? Can we build sandcastles? Can we—" "Breathe, buddy," Ethan laughed. "We've got 3 whole days. We can do everything." His mother reached them, elegant as always despite the long drive. She kissed Ethan's cheek and raised an eyebrow at his appearance. "Worn jeans and a faded jacket? What happened to my son who owns 7 identical Navy suits?" "He's on vacation," Ethan said. "The real kind." "Grandma, did you see the pool? It's huge." Marcus was vibrating with excitement. "I did see it, sweetheart. Very impressive." She turned to Ethan. "Should we check in?" "Already done. I'll show you to your room." As they walked toward the elevators, Marcus holding Ethan's hand and chattering nonstop about all the things he wanted to do, Ethan noticed staff members watching with small smiles. The front desk clerk who'd helped Mrs. Patterson caught his eye and nodded slightly, a gesture of acknowledgement and maybe approval. His mother had a suite next to his, connecting door between them so Marcus could go back and forth freely. While she unpacked, Ethan took Marcus onto his balcony to show him the ocean view. "It's so big, Dad," Marcus breathed, staring at the endless water. "Does it ever end?" "Eventually, thousands of miles away." "What's on the other side?" "Different countries, different people, different beaches where other kids are probably looking at the ocean and wondering what's on our side." Marcus considered this seriously. "I think they're probably thinking the same things we are, like, I wonder if there's ice cream." Ethan laughed, pulling his son close. "You're probably right, buddy." They spent the rest of the afternoon on the beach, building elaborate sandcastles that waves gradually destroyed, searching for shells, and attempting, mostly unsuccessfully, to body surf in the gentle waves. Ethan's mother sat under an umbrella reading a book, occasionally looking up to watch them with an expression of contentment. As the sun began its descent toward the horizon, painting the sky in impossible shades of orange and pink, Marcus tugged on Ethan's hand. "Dad, can I ask you something?" "Always." "Why do some people have more money than other people?" The question caught Ethan off guard. That's complicated, buddy. Lots of reasons. Some people work jobs that pay more. Some people inherit money from their families. Some people get lucky. Some people work really hard and still don't have much money because the system isn't always fair. Is it fair that we have a lot of money and some people don't? Ethan knelt in the sand to be at eye level with his son. No, it's not fair. That's why it's important that people who have money use it to help others, to create opportunities, to make the world better. Money itself isn't bad, but what you do with it, that matters. Marcus nodded solemnly. Like Mom used to say. She said we're lucky, and lucky people should help unlucky people. Your mom was a smart woman. I miss her. Me too, buddy. Every day. They sat together as the sun sank lower, and Ethan thought about all the conversations still to come. With his board of directors who would question the revenue implications of his policy changes, with industry peers who would say he was naive for believing luxury and dignity could coexist, with the guests who would complain that Azure Crest had lost its exclusive edge. Let them complain. Let them question. Let them take their business elsewhere if treating all human beings with equal respect was too high a price to pay for luxury accommodations. Because some things, dignity, respect, basic human decency, those things weren't negotiable. Not anymore. Not at any price. The next morning arrived with the kind of perfect California sunshine that seemed designed for vacation brochures. Ethan woke to find Marcus already awake, nose pressed against the balcony glass, watching seagulls wheel and dive over the water. "They're fishing, Dad," Marcus announced without turning around. "I've been watching them for like an hour. They're really good at it." An hour? Ethan checked his phone. 6:30. "Buddy, it's early. You could have slept more." "I'm on vacation. Who sleeps on vacation?" Marcus turned, his face bright with 7-year-old logic that was impossible to argue with. "Can we get breakfast? I'm starving." "Let's see if Grandma's awake." His mother was not only awake, but already dressed, sitting on her balcony with coffee and the newspaper. She looked up as they knocked and entered through the connecting door. "Good morning, gentlemen. I assume from Marcus's expression that breakfast is urgently required?" "Desperately required," Marcus said with maximum drama. "I might actually die of hunger." "Well, we can't have that. Let's see what Azure Crest restaurant has to offer." The main dining room was a study in elegant simplicity. White tablecloths, ocean views, fresh flowers on every table. At 7 in the morning, it was perhaps half full. A mix of early risers and families with young children who'd abandoned any hope of sleeping late. A hostess greeted them at the entrance, her smile professional and welcoming. Her eyes took in Ethan's casual clothes. He'd deliberately worn the same worn jeans and faded jacket from check-in, and her expression didn't change at all. "Good morning. Welcome to Tidewater. 3 for breakfast?" "Please," Ethan said. "Right this way." She led them to a table by the window with a spectacular ocean view, the kind of prime real estate that used to be reserved exclusively for guests the staff deemed appropriately valuable. Ethan noticed her seat them without hesitation, without the subtle assessment he'd seen so often in luxury establishments. Small victory, small change, but change nonetheless. Their server appeared moments later, a man in his 40s with kind eyes and a genuinely warm smile. His name tag read Robert. "Good morning, folks. Can I start you off with some coffee? Juice for the young man?" "Orange juice, please," Marcus said. "The kind with pulp." "A man who knows what he wants. I like it." Robert's smile widened. "We also have fresh squeezed grapefruit juice if you're feeling adventurous." Marcus considered this seriously. "Is it sour?" "A little bit, but also sweet. It's an adventure for your taste buds." "Okay, I'll try the adventure juice." After Robert left to get their drinks, Ethan's mother leaned across the table. "All right, Ethan, I've been patient. Are you going to tell me what's really going on?" "What do you mean?" "I mean you look like someone carrying the weight of important decisions. I mean you've checked your phone exactly 17 times since we sat down. I mean your assistant has called twice already, and it's not even 7:30. She fixed him with the look that had extracted truth from him since childhood. "What happened here before we arrived?" Ethan glanced at Marcus, who was absorbed in watching a family of pelicans glide past the window. "I saw something that needed fixing." "And you fixed it?" "I'm trying to." His mother studied him for a long moment. "Your father used to get that same expression when he was taking on something bigger than himself. That mix of determination and exhaustion. I never knew Dad cared much about social justice." "Your father believed that how you treat people when no one's watching reveals your true character. He would have approved of whatever you're doing here, as long as it's the right thing." She paused as Robert returned with their drinks. "Is it the right thing?" "I think so. I hope so." Marcus tried his grapefruit juice and made a face that suggested adventure might be overrated. Robert laughed and quickly brought orange juice as backup, treating the 7-year-old's changing preferences with the same attentiveness he'd show any guest. After they ordered, pancakes for Marcus, eggs Benedict for his mother, simple scrambled eggs and toast for Ethan, the restaurant began to fill up. Ethan found himself watching the staff work, noting the interactions between servers and guests. At a nearby table, a family similar to the one he'd seen at the pool yesterday, working-class clothes, kids with discount store toys, was being served with the same attentiveness as a couple in obvious designer wear 3 tables over. The server moved between tables with equal enthusiasm, her smile genuine for everyone. But not all the changes were smooth. Ethan watched a well-dressed man in his 60s snap his fingers at a server, the gesture sharp and demanding. The server, a young woman who couldn't have been more than 22, walked over with professional composure. "How can I help you, sir?" "This coffee is lukewarm. I expect better from a resort of this caliber." "I apologize. I'll bring you a fresh pot immediately." "See that you do, and next time check the temperature before serving it. Basic competence, really." The young woman's face remained neutral, but Ethan saw the flash of hurt in her eyes before she turned away. He made a mental note of the man's table number. Their food arrived, beautifully presented and delicious. Marcus attacked his pancakes with enthusiasm, while recounting an elaborate plan for the day involving swimming, sandcastles, and maybe finding a shark tooth because Grandma said they're on beaches sometimes. "I said they're sometimes found on beaches," his mother corrected gently. "I make no promises about actually finding one. But we could look, right?" "We can absolutely look." Ethan's phone buzzed. Sarah, with a text. "Board meeting this afternoon at 2 p.m. via video conference. They want to discuss Azure Crest situation. No avoiding this one." He typed back, "I'll be there." His mother caught the expression on his face. "Work? Always. Even on vacation? Especially on vacation, apparently." He set the phone down. "But it can wait until this afternoon. This morning belongs to Marcus and shark teeth hunting." After breakfast, they spent 2 hours on the beach. Marcus approached the shark tooth search with scientific seriousness, examining every shell and rock with intense focus. Ethan's mother sat under an umbrella, occasionally calling out encouragement or warnings when Marcus ventured too close to the waves. Ethan found himself studying the other families on the beach, noting the invisible boundaries people created. The wealthy guests clustered in one area, their designer beach equipment creating a kind of territory. The middle-class families stayed mostly in another section, their regular beach toys and discount store towels marking them as different species in the same ecosystem. No signs enforced this separation. No rules required it. It just happened naturally, people sorting themselves by economic tribe, comfortable among their own kind. Except for Marcus, who'd spotted another kid building a sandcastle nearby and immediately ran over to ask if he could help, completely oblivious to the fact that the other boy's family was clearly operating on a much tighter budget. Within minutes, the two boys were collaborating on an elaborate fortress, their parents exchanging tentative smiles across the invisible boundary. Children, Ethan thought, had the right idea about things. They saw potential friends, not economic categories. Around 11, his mother declared that they all needed to get out of the sun for a while. Marcus protested, but was clearly flagging, the morning's excitement catching up with him. They returned to the room, where Marcus immediately fell asleep on the couch, sandy and content. Ethan's mother settled into a chair with her book. "Go," she said without looking up. "Deal with whatever's weighing on you. We'll be fine." "I have a meeting at 2. "I know. Go prepare. Marcus and I will find lunch when he wakes up. You can join us for dinner." Ethan kissed her forehead. "Thank you. That's what grandmothers are for. Also, Ethan, whatever you're doing here, the staff seemed different today. Lighter somehow. Like a weight's been lifted. Keep doing that." Back in his own room, Ethan pulled out his laptop and spent the next 2 hours reviewing reports and preparing for the board meeting he knew would be contentious. The numbers told a complicated story. Short-term revenue projections were down slightly due to the policy changes and staff turnover. But early feedback from guests showed a marked increase in positive reviews, particularly from demographics Azure Crest had historically underserved. The question was whether the board would value long-term sustainability over short-term profits. At exactly 2 o'clock, his laptop chimed with the incoming video conference. Ethan connected to find 8 board members staring at him from their respective offices and homes, their expressions ranging from curious to concerned to openly hostile. Richard Thornton, the board chairman and a man who'd made his fortune in real estate, spoke first. "Ethan, thank you for joining us. I think we all know why we're here. There's been some concern about recent events at Azure Crest." "Concern," Ethan repeated neutrally. "That's one word for it." "Would you like to explain what happened? We're hearing reports about staff terminations, policy overhauls, and some kind of confrontation in the lobby that's apparently gone viral on social media." Ethan had known the social media angle would come up eventually. Several guests had indeed posted videos of the lobby confrontation, though most had only captured fragments. The videos had gotten modest attention online, mostly people debating whether Ethan had been justified or had overreacted. "I went to Azure Crest to experience it as a regular guest," Ethan said. "I wanted to see how the resort treated people who didn't look wealthy, who didn't arrive in expensive cars or designer clothes. What I found was a systemic culture of discrimination that prioritized some guests over others based purely on appearance and perceived economic status." "That's hospitality economics," another board member, Margaret Chen, interjected. "You allocate resources to high-value guests. That's standard across the luxury industry. There's a difference between offering premium services to people who pay for them and treating some confirmed reservations as less valid than others based on how someone looks," Ethan countered. "We made a guest with a confirmed reservation wait while we scrambled to find him a room because staff decided he didn't belong at our resort. That's not economics, that's discrimination." "The guest being you," Richard noted. "The guest being anyone who doesn't fit someone's arbitrary profile of what a luxury resort guest should look like." Margaret leaned forward, her expression sharp. "Ethan, I appreciate your idealism, but you're running businesses, not charities. Azure Crest's brand is built on exclusivity, on catering to a specific clientele. If you start treating everyone the same, you lose what makes the property valuable to high-end guests." "What makes the property valuable," Ethan said, his voice hardening, "is exceptional service, beautiful amenities, and a genuine commitment to hospitality. None of those things require making some guests feel unwelcome. If our high-end guests can't enjoy their vacation unless other people are being treated poorly, then they're not the kind of guests we should want." "That's easy to say when you own the company," another board member, Thomas Wu, said. "But we have shareholders to consider, profit margins to maintain, quarterly targets to hit. Your policy changes are going to cost us money. Short-term, possibly. Long-term, we'll be more profitable because we'll have genuine customer loyalty instead of customers who tolerate us because we're exclusive." "That's speculation," Margaret said flatly. "What we know for certain is that luxury hospitality operates on well-established principles. You're throwing those principles out because of one bad check-in experience." "Not one experience. 247 documented complaints over 18 months about discriminatory treatment. Complaints that were systematically dismissed because we cared more about maintaining our image than examining our practices." The board went silent for a moment. Richard's expression suggested this was news to him. "I wasn't aware we had that many complaints," he said carefully, "because they were categorized as unrealistic expectations or cultural misunderstandings and never escalated to board level. Our operations manager at Azure Crest built an entire system designed to keep certain guests happy at the expense of others, and nobody questioned it because our satisfaction scores among wealthy guests remained high." "So you fired her?" Thomas asked. "She resigned, but yes, I would have terminated her employment. She slapped a guest, me, in the lobby, when I asked to be treated with basic respect. That alone is grounds for immediate dismissal." "She slapped you?" Richard's eyebrows rose. "That's not in any of the reports I received." "Check the security footage, it's all documented." More silence. Ethan could see some board members typing notes, others exchanging glances off screen. "Let me ask you something, Ethan," Margaret said, her tone shifting to something almost condescending. "You're a young man, relatively new to running these properties. You inherited significant wealth and control from your father, but you don't have decades of industry experience. Are you certain you're not overcorrecting based on personal feelings rather than sound business judgment?" The question was designed to undermine him, to frame his decisions as emotional rather than rational. Ethan had been expecting it. "I'm certain that treating human beings with dignity isn't overcorrection," he said calmly. "I'm certain that a business model built on making some people feel inferior so others can feel superior is fundamentally flawed. And I'm certain that I'm willing to accept lower profits if the alternative is running properties that systematically devalue human worth based on economic status." "Lower profits affect everyone," Thomas pointed out. "Shareholders, employees, everyone who depends on these companies for their livelihoods. You know what also affects employees? Working in a toxic culture where they're trained to judge and discriminate, where they have to betray their basic human decency to keep their jobs, where they watch people being mistreated and have to participate or stay silent. Ethan's voice rose slightly with conviction. I've talked to our staff at Azure Crest. The turnover rate is 30% annually because good people can't stomach the culture. Imagine how much money we'd save just by retaining qualified employees who didn't hate coming to work. Richard held up a hand. Everyone, let's take a breath. Ethan, I hear your concerns, and clearly there were problems at Azure Crest that needed addressing. But Margaret and Thomas raise valid points about business realities. Can you walk us through your plan going forward? Specifically, how do you intend to maintain profitability while implementing these changes? Ethan spent the next 20 minutes presenting his analysis. The market research showing growing demand for luxury hospitality that didn't require wealth-based discrimination, the employee retention savings, the expanded demographic reach, the positive press already emerging from guests who'd experienced the new policies. He showed projection models accounting for potential losses from guests who left because they couldn't handle equal treatment, balanced against gains from new markets. The data was solid. The projections were conservative. The business case was sound, but he could see resistance on several faces. Not because the numbers were wrong, but because the fundamental premise challenged their worldview. I have a question, said Jennifer Park, one of the quieter board members who ran a successful hotel chain in Asia. These policy changes, are they only for Azure Crest, or are you planning to implement them across all properties? All properties, Ethan confirmed. Azure Crest was the first intervention because that's where I saw the problem firsthand. But I've started reviewing operations across our entire portfolio, and I suspect we'll find similar issues elsewhere. That's a massive undertaking, Jennifer said. Complete culture change across 18 properties in multiple countries. The implementation costs alone will be worth it, Ethan interrupted, because the alternative is continuing to run businesses that I'm ashamed to own. The bluntness of that statement seemed to land like a physical blow. Several board members looked genuinely shocked. Ashamed? Margaret's voice carried an edge. That's rather dramatic. Is it? I own luxury resorts where staff are trained to assess guests based on their clothes and cars, where confirmed reservations are treated as negotiable, depending on whether someone looks wealthy enough, where human dignity is priced and rationed. Yes, I'm ashamed of that, and I'm going to fix it. Richard cleared his throat. Ethan, I think we need to discuss this further at our next quarterly meeting. In the meantime, I'd like you to proceed carefully with any additional policy changes. Consult with the board before implementing sweeping reforms. We all want what's best for the company. Do we? Ethan challenged. Because from where I'm sitting, it looks like some of us want what's most profitable in the next quarter, regardless of whether it's actually right. That's unfair, Thomas protested. We're not monsters. We're business people trying to ensure sustainable operations that benefit everyone involved. Then support changes that make our operations actually sustainable instead of just profitable. Support building companies we can be proud of instead of just companies that maximize shareholder value. The meeting continued for another 30 minutes, circling the same arguments without resolution. Richard finally called it, suggesting they reconvene in 2 weeks after everyone had time to review Ethan's proposals in detail. After disconnecting, Ethan sat in silence, staring at his laptop screen. He'd known the board would resist. He'd known some members would prioritize short-term profits over ethical operations. But actually experiencing it, hearing educated, successful people defend discriminatory practices in the language of business necessity, left him feeling tired and frustrated. His phone rang. Sarah. How bad was it? She asked without preamble. About what I expected. Resistance, pushback, questioning my judgment and experience. Are they going to force changes? They can try. I control enough shares that they can't override me completely, but they can make things difficult, slow down implementation, create obstacles. So what do we do? Ethan looked out at the ocean, where Marcus and his mother were walking along the shore, the 7-year-old stopping every few feet to examine something in the sand. His son's joy was uncomplicated, pure, untainted by considerations of profit margins and quarterly projections. We do what's right, Ethan said, regardless of what the board thinks. I didn't build this company to maximize profits. I built it to mean something. Your father would be proud, Sarah said quietly. I hope so. Listen, Can you set up meetings with the operations managers at our other properties? I want to do what I did here, show up unannounced, see how regular guests are treated, evaluate the culture firsthand. You're going to personally visit all 18 properties, if that's what it takes. That's going to take months, Ethan, and the board is going to lose their minds when they realize you're expanding this rather than pulling back. Let them lose their minds. Some things are more important than keeping the board comfortable. After hanging up, Ethan changed into swim trunks and headed down to the beach to join his family. Marcus spotted him and came running, holding something in his cupped hands. "Dad, Dad, look what I found!" Ethan knelt down to see a small, triangular piece of fossilized shark tooth, dark gray and surprisingly sharp. "That's amazing, buddy. Where'd you find it?" "Grandma showed me where to look. She said you have to pay attention to what most people ignore." Marcus beamed with pride. "Can I keep it?" "Of course. I'm going to put it in my special things box at home, with Mom's bracelet and the ticket from when we went to the aquarium." Ethan's throat tightened. "I think that's a perfect place for it." They spent the rest of the afternoon building sandcastles and bodyboarding in the gentle waves. Ethan's mother captured photos on her phone, remarking that she hadn't seen Ethan this relaxed in years, despite knowing he'd just come from a contentious board meeting. "You're fighting something, aren't you?" she said during a quiet moment while Marcus played at the water's edge. "How do you always know?" "Mother's intuition. Also, you get the same expression your father had when he was taking on the establishment. What are you fighting for?" "Basic human decency, the revolutionary concept that people deserve respect regardless of their bank account." His mother smiled. "Your father used to say that the test of civilization isn't how you treat the powerful, but how you treat the powerless. Sounds like you inherited more than just his business." "I'm trying. The board thinks I'm being naive and idealistic." "Good. The world needs more naivety and idealism. Cynical pragmatism has done quite enough damage." That evening, they had dinner at the resort's oceanfront restaurant, a more casual venue than the formal dining room from breakfast. Marcus insisted on trying every dessert on the menu, a request Ethan granted because vacation calories didn't count, and because his son's joy was the best thing he'd experienced in months. As they ate, Ethan noticed Robert, their server from breakfast, working the dinner shift. The older man moved between tables with practiced grace, treating every guest with the same warmth regardless of their appearance or obvious economic status. At one point, Ethan watched him spend 5 minutes helping an elderly woman understand the menu options, patiently explaining ingredients and preparation methods without any hint of impatience. Before leaving, Ethan flagged Robert over. "I wanted to tell you, you're excellent at what you do. The way you treat everyone with genuine respect and attention, that's what hospitality should be." Robert looked surprised, then pleased. "Thank you, sir. I've been doing this for 30 years, and I learned a long time ago that everyone who walks through that door deserves to feel welcome. Rich, poor, doesn't matter. They're all people who chose to spend their time and money here. That counts for something." "It counts for everything," Ethan agreed. "Keep doing what you're doing." After Robert left, Marcus tugged on Ethan's sleeve. "Dad, why did you tell him that?" "Because people don't get thanked enough for doing the right thing. Sometimes we only hear about it when we mess up, not when we get it right." Marcus considered this seriously. "I'm going to try to thank people more then. Like, tomorrow, I'm going to thank the people who clean our room, because making beds is hard work." Ethan pulled his son close, his heart full. "That's a great idea, buddy." Walking back to their rooms through the resort's landscaped gardens, Ethan felt the weight of the day settling on his shoulders. The contentious board meeting, the resistance to change, the long road ahead. But he also felt something else. Certainty. The bone-deep knowledge that he was fighting for something that mattered, something worth the cost. His mother paused at her door, Marcus already drowsy against her shoulder. "Ethan, whatever you're doing here, whatever fight you're in the middle of, don't give up. The world needs people who care more about doing right than doing well." "I won't give up," Ethan promised. And standing there in the soft light of the California evening, his son already asleep and dreaming of shark teeth and sandcastles, Ethan knew he meant it. Because some battles were worth fighting regardless of the odds, some principles were worth defending regardless of the cost, and some changes were worth making even if the whole world told you to stop. Dignity wasn't negotiable. Respect wasn't conditional. And Azure Crest, along with every property he owned, was going to prove that luxury and humanity could coexist, no matter what it took. The third morning of their vacation dawned gray and overcast, unusual for this stretch of California coast. Ethan woke to the sound of rain pattering against the windows, steady and relentless. Marcus appeared in the connecting doorway moments later, his face a portrait of 7-year-old devastation. "Dad, it's raining. We can't go to the beach." "Come here, buddy." Ethan pulled his son onto the bed. "Rain doesn't mean the vacation's over. It just means we do different things today." "Like what?" "Like explore the resort. Like find out what else this place has to offer besides beaches and sunshine." Marcus's expression suggested this was poor compensation, but he was willing to be convinced. After breakfast, Robert greeted them like old friends and recommended the Belgian waffles, which proved to be an excellent choice. They spent the morning in the resort's game room and indoor pool. Ethan's mother joined them for lunch, then announced she was going to the spa for a massage, and suggested the boys find their own entertainment. "There's an aquarium about 20 minutes from here," she said. "Marcus has been talking about sharks non-stop since he found that tooth. Might be educational." The aquarium was small but well-maintained, focused primarily on local marine life. Marcus was enthralled, pressing his face against every tank, asking questions faster than Ethan could answer them. They spent 2 hours winding through exhibits, learning about tide pools and kelp forests, and the surprising complexity of jellyfish nervous systems. In the shark exhibit, Marcus stood transfixed before a tank containing several leopard sharks gliding through the water with liquid grace. "They're beautiful," Marcus whispered. "Are they dangerous?" "Not really. Leopard sharks are pretty gentle. They eat small fish and crustaceans, not people." "Then why are people scared of sharks?" "Because some sharks are dangerous, but mostly because people fear what they don't understand. It's easier to be afraid than to learn." Marcus turned to look at his father, his expression serious beyond his years. "Is that why some people are mean to other people? Because they don't understand them?" The question caught Ethan off guard with its insight. "Yeah, buddy. A lot of the time, that's exactly why. People see someone who looks different or lives differently, and instead of being curious, they get scared or judgmental." "That's dumb." "It is, but it's also pretty common. That's why it's important to always try to understand before you judge." They watched the sharks for a while longer, their conversation drifting to easier topics. Whether sharks ever got bored, if they had friends, whether Marcus could have a pet shark if they built a really big tank in the backyard. The answer to the last question was a firm no, but Ethan appreciated his son's ambition. Driving back to the resort, Ethan's phone rang. Sarah, which meant work couldn't be avoided any longer. "I'm going to take this," he told Marcus. "Can you be quiet for a few minutes?" Marcus nodded, pulling out the drawing pad and colored pencils his grandmother had wisely packed. "Sarah, what's up?" "We have a situation." Her voice carried that particular tone that meant complications. "Do you remember Mrs. Patterson, the young mother who checked in your first evening here?" Ethan did remember, the exhausted woman with the baby and toddler celebrating her anniversary. "What about her?" "She filed a complaint this morning. Actually, not a complaint exactly, more like a commendation. She wanted management to know that her entire stay has been exceptional, that she's never felt more welcome at a luxury resort, and that every single staff member she's encountered has treated her family with incredible warmth and respect." "That's wonderful, but why does that create a situation?" "Because she also mentioned that she overheard other guests complaining about the declining standards at Azure Crest, specifically complaints about the resort catering to the wrong clientele and losing its exclusive atmosphere. The complaints apparently got loud enough yesterday that she heard them in the lobby." Ethan felt his jaw tighten. "Let me guess. The guests doing the complaining were the type who used to receive preferential treatment." Exactly. And here's where it gets complicated. 3 of them checked out early this morning and posted negative reviews online. The reviews are getting attention because these are influential people. One of them is a tech CEO with 500,000 social media followers. What did the reviews say? I'll read you the CEO's. "Azure Crest has abandoned the standards that made it a premier destination. The staff now treats everyone the same regardless of status or loyalty, resulting in degraded service for valued guests. The exclusivity that justified the premium pricing has disappeared. I will not be returning and cannot recommend this property to peers who expect and deserve exceptional treatment. Ethan watched raindrops race down the windshield, each one chasing the one before it in an endless pattern. So we're succeeding. What? If we're losing guests who equate exceptional treatment with other people being treated poorly, then we're doing exactly what we set out to do. The policy changes are working. Ethan, this tech CEO has massive influence. His review is already being shared widely. Other luxury travel bloggers are picking it up, asking whether Azure Crest is still worth the premium price if it's not exclusive anymore. Let them ask. We'll answer by providing exceptional service to everyone, not just people with seven-figure net worths. Sarah was quiet for a moment. The board is going to freak out about this. The board is already freaking out. This just gives them more ammunition. Ethan pulled into the resort's parking lot. Here's what I want you to do. Draft a public response to these reviews. Thank them for their feedback, acknowledge that we've implemented new policies focused on treating all guests with equal dignity and respect, and make it clear that this is the direction we're committed to moving forward. Don't apologize, don't backtrack, own it completely. That's going to accelerate the board situation. Good. I'd rather have this fight now than let it fester. He put the car in park. Also, reach out to Mrs. Patterson. Thank her for the commendation and ask if she'd be willing to share her experience publicly. We need voices from guests who appreciate the changes, not just complaints from people who miss being prioritized. On it. How's the vacation going otherwise? Marcus found a shark tooth and wants to adopt a leopard shark. Otherwise, pretty standard. After hanging up, Ethan sat in the car for a moment while Marcus colored, thinking about the collision of principles and economics that was playing out in real time. Every business decision had consequences. The question was whether you were willing to accept the right consequences for the right reasons. His phone buzzed with an email. Richard Thornton, the board chairman, requesting an emergency meeting tomorrow morning to discuss concerning developments at Azure Crest that require immediate attention. Ethan typed back a brief response confirming he'd be available, then put his phone away. Tomorrow's battle could wait. Tonight, he had dinner with his family and a 7-year-old who wanted to discuss shark biology in exhaustive detail. The rain had stopped by evening, leaving everything washed clean and glistening. Ethan's mother suggested they eat at the resort's most formal restaurant, the one that required reservations and had a dress code. Ethan hesitated, knowing he'd packed exactly 0 items of clothing that qualified as formal, but his mother waved off his concerns. You own the place. I think they'll make an exception. The restaurant, called simply The Point for its location on a rocky outcrop with 360-degree ocean views, was exactly as elegant as advertised. Crystal chandeliers, white tablecloths so crisp they looked starched into submission, servers in actual tuxedos. The kind of place where Marcus's Spider-Man t-shirt and light-up sneakers would normally raise eyebrows. The hostess who greeted them was a woman in her 50s with silver hair and the bearing of someone who'd spent decades in high-end hospitality. Her name tag read Catherine. "Good evening," she said warmly. "Welcome to The Point. Do you have a reservation?" "We do. Brooks, party of 3. Catherine checked her system, and Ethan saw the moment she recognized his name. Her eyes widened fractionally, then her professional composure reasserted itself. But her smile, when she looked up, carried genuine warmth rather than the calculating assessment he'd experienced on check-in day. "Of course, Mr. Brooks. We're delighted to have you this evening. Please, follow me." She led them to a prime table by the window, where the last light of sunset was painting the ocean in shades of purple and gold. As she presented menus, she knelt down to Marcus's level. "And what's your name, young sir?" "Marcus. I'm 7. I found a shark tooth on the beach." "That's wonderful. We actually have a children's menu, but if you'd like to order from the regular menu, I can help you find something you might enjoy. We have an excellent chicken dish that's not too fancy if you're interested." Marcus looked at his father, who nodded encouragingly. "Okay, can I have that?" "Absolutely. Your server will be Antonio, and he's fantastic. He has a son about your age, so he's very good at explaining food in normal people language." After Catherine left, Ethan's mother raised her eyebrows. She was lovely. She was professional, Ethan corrected. There's a difference between treating someone well because you know who they are and treating them well because it's the right thing to do. Spoken like someone who's thought about this a lot lately. Their server, Antonio, arrived and proved to be everything Catherine had promised. Warm, patient, with Marcus's questions about what exactly was in the chicken dish, and genuinely enthusiastic about helping them have a good experience. Watching him work, Ethan felt some of his tension ease. The culture change was happening, slowly but genuinely, staff by staff member, interaction by interaction. The meal was exceptional. Locally sourced ingredients prepared with obvious skill, presentations that managed to be artistic without being pretentious, flavors that justified every dollar of the premium pricing. But what struck Ethan most was watching Antonio provide the exact same level of attentive service to every table in his section, regardless of what the diners were wearing or how they presented themselves. At one point, a family came in wearing what were obviously their nicest clothes. The father in a sport coat that didn't quite fit, the mother in a dress that had probably been purchased specifically for this occasion, their teenage daughter clearly uncomfortable in heels. They had the nervous energy of people for whom this restaurant represented a special splurge, a once-in-a-lifetime experience. Antonio greeted them with the same warmth he'd shown Ethan's family, spending time explaining menu options, making recommendations, treating their questions with respect rather than condescension. The family's initial nervousness melted into obvious pleasure, their special evening becoming what they'd hoped it would be. That, Ethan thought, was hospitality, not exclusivity, not making some people feel special by making others feel inferior, just genuine care for everyone who walked through the door. After dinner, while his mother took Marcus back to the room for his bedtime routine, Ethan walked through the resort's public spaces, observing with the careful attention he'd learned over years of evaluating properties. The lobby was moderately busy with guests returning from dinner or heading out for evening entertainment. He positioned himself in an unobtrusive corner and simply watched. A couple in expensive evening wear approached the concierge desk asking about theater tickets. The concierge spent 10 minutes helping them, making calls, finding options, being enthusiastically helpful. 5 minutes later, a younger couple in jeans and casual shirts asked the same concierge about hiking recommendations for the next day. Without missing a beat, the concierge pulled out maps, marked trails, provided details about difficulty levels and scenic viewpoints with the same enthusiasm he'd shown the theater couple. Equal treatment, equal respect, equal care. Ethan's phone buzzed. Ethan's. A text from Sarah with a link to Mrs. Patterson's social media post about her stay at Azure Crest. He opened it to find a lengthy, heartfelt review describing how welcome her family had felt, how the staff had gone out of their way to make their anniversary special despite their limited budget, how they'd experienced genuine luxury hospitality for the first time in their lives. The post had been shared dozens of times already, with comments from other people saying they'd felt similarly welcomed at Azure Crest, that something had shifted at the resort recently, that it felt like a place that actually cared about guests as people rather than revenue sources. A second text from Sarah. This is starting to gain traction. Multiple positive reviews coming in from guests who appreciate the changes. We might be creating a counter-narrative to the negative reviews from the exclusivity crowd. Ethan typed back. Good. Let's amplify it. Reach out to travel writers who focus on accessible luxury, family travel, inclusive hospitality. Show them we're building something different. A shadow fell across his phone screen. Ethan looked up to find Catherine, the hostess from The Point, standing nearby. Mr. Brooks, I'm sorry to interrupt your evening, but I wanted to thank you personally. Thank me for what? For the changes you've made here, for caring about how we treat people. She glanced around, ensuring they had relative privacy. I've worked in luxury hospitality for 32 years. Started as a housekeeper, worked my way up, and I've seen every variation of how hotels treat guests who don't fit the typical luxury profile. Most places we're taught to prioritize, to assess, to allocate our limited resources to the most valuable guests. But you don't agree with that approach. I hate it, Catherine said bluntly. I got into this business because I love making people happy, creating experiences, being part of someone's special memories. But over the years, it became less about hospitality and more about hierarchy. Less about serving and more about sorting. It wore on me. made me question whether I still wanted to do this work. She paused, emotion evident in her voice. What you did at that staff meeting, saying that everyone deserves respect, creating policies that actually enforce that, it reminded me why I fell in love with hospitality in the first place. So thank you. You've given some of us our passion back. Ethan felt his throat tighten. That means more than you know. I just wanted you to hear it from someone who's been in the trenches. The changes matter. They're making a real difference. After Catherine left, Ethan remained in the lobby for a while longer, watching the resort's evening rhythm. His phone continued to buzz with updates. More positive reviews appearing online, requests for interviews from travel journalists interested in Azure Crest's new approach. A message from a competitor's executive asking if Ethan was serious about industry-wide change. Around 10, he returned to his room to find his mother reading on his balcony while Marcus slept in the connecting room. He's exhausted, she reported. Talked for an hour about sharks and aquariums and wanting to be a marine biologist when he grows up. Also announced that when he's grown up, he's going to make sure everyone is treated nicely everywhere, just like you're doing. Ethan sank into a chair, the weight of the day settling on him. No pressure there. He's watching you, Ethan, learning from you. What you do here, the stands you take, the fights you choose. He's absorbing all of it, building his understanding of what matters, what's worth fighting for. I hope I'm teaching him the right things. You're teaching him that principles matter more than profits, that human dignity isn't negotiable, that doing the right thing is worth the cost even when it's hard. His mother reached over and squeezed his hand. Those are exactly the right things. The emergency board meeting the next morning started exactly as contentiously as Ethan had anticipated. Richard Thornton opened with a litany of concerns, negative reviews from influential guests, social media backlash from the exclusivity crowd, preliminary revenue projections showing short-term losses, questions from major investors about strategy changes at Azure Crest. We're facing a potential brand crisis, Richard said, his expression grave. The negative reviews are gaining traction in luxury travel circles. People are questioning whether Azure Crest maintains the standards that justified our premium positioning. The standards we're setting, Ethan countered, are higher than what we had before. We're just measuring different things. Instead of exclusivity, we're measuring genuine hospitality. Instead of preferential treatment for wealthy guests, we're measuring equal respect for everyone. Margaret Chen jumped in, her tone sharp. Ethan, I've reviewed the latest data. We've lost approximately 15% of our high-value repeat guests in the past week. These are people who've been coming to Azure Crest for years, who spend extensively on amenities and services. Losing them has significant revenue implications. And we've gained new guests from demographics we've historically excluded, Ethan replied. Working families, middle-class couples, people who've never felt welcome at a luxury resort before. The revenue mix is changing, not disappearing. The revenue per guest is dropping, Thomas Wu pointed out. That's basic economics. If we're filling rooms with lower-spending guests, our profitability decreases. Short-term, perhaps. Long-term, we're building customer loyalty that doesn't depend on exclusivity. We're creating a sustainable model based on genuine value rather than artificial scarcity. The arguments continued, circling the same fundamental disagreement. Whether hospitality should be hierarchical or egalitarian, whether luxury required exclusivity, whether treating everyone equally meant degrading service for those accustomed to preferential treatment. Finally, Richard called for a pause. Ethan, I think we need to be realistic about what you're trying to accomplish. Culture change on this scale, across all our properties. It's ambitious, possibly too ambitious. The board appreciates your idealism, but we have fiduciary responsibilities. We can't sacrifice profitability for principles. They're not separate, Ethan said firmly. Profitable companies built on unethical foundations aren't sustainable. Eventually, the culture rot spreads, good employees leave, customer loyalty erodes, and you're left with a hollow brand propped up by increasingly desperate marketing. That's speculation, Margaret said. What we know for certain is that our current approach, the approach before your changes, was working. We had strong numbers, loyal high-end clientele, and solid market positioning. We also had 247 discrimination complaints in 18 months, Ethan shot back. We had 30% annual staff turnover. We had a culture where employees were trained to treat people differently based on appearance and perceived wealth. That's not success. That's a ticking time bomb. Jennifer Park, who'd been mostly quiet, spoke up. Ethan, can I ask you something? This fight you're having with us, with the industry standards, with the luxury hospitality model, is this about business or is this personal? The question hung in the air. Ethan could feel everyone watching, waiting to see if he'd admit to emotional motivation they could then dismiss as unprofessional. It's both, he said honestly. Yes, it's personal. I experienced firsthand how it feels to be judged and dismissed based on appearance. I watched staff at a property I own treat me like I didn't belong because I wasn't wearing the right clothes or driving the right car. That was humiliating and infuriating, and it opened my eyes to what countless other people experience at our resorts every single day. He paused, gathering his thoughts. But it's also good business. Companies built on genuine values, on treating stakeholders, customers, employees, communities, with actual respect, those companies outperform over the long term. Study after study shows it. Customer loyalty built on authentic connection beats loyalty built on exclusivity. Employee retention saves money and improves service quality. Ethical operations create sustainable competitive advantages. Those studies also show, Margaret interjected, that values-driven approaches work better in mass market contexts than luxury markets. Luxury is inherently about exclusivity, about offering something not everyone can have. Luxury should be about quality, not exclusivity, Ethan countered. Exceptional service, beautiful environments, attention to detail, those things don't require making some people feel inferior so others can feel superior. We can offer genuine luxury to everyone who can afford our rates without discriminating based on whether they look wealthy enough. Richard sighed, the sound heavy with frustration. Ethan, the board appreciates your passion, but we need to consider requesting that you slow down these implementations, perhaps pilot them at 1 or 2 properties, rather than rolling them out system-wide. Give us time to assess impact, adjust approaches, minimize risk. No, Ethan said simply. No? These aren't experiments to be piloted carefully. These are moral imperatives to be implemented immediately. Every day we delay is another day we're running properties where people are treated as less than human based on arbitrary economic factors. I'm not willing to slow that down to make shareholders more comfortable. The silence that followed was profound. Ethan could see the calculation happening behind various board members' eyes, weighing his controlling interest against their collective influence, assessing whether to push harder or retreat temporarily. Finally, Richard spoke, his voice carefully neutral. I think we need to table this discussion for now. Ethan, you have our concerns on record. We'd like to see detailed quarterly reports on the financial impact of these policy changes. If the numbers support your approach, excellent. If they don't, we'll need to revisit this conversation more seriously. Fair enough, Ethan agreed. But I want to be clear. I'm not changing course based on one quarter's returns. This is a multi-year transformation, and I'm committed to seeing it through. After the meeting ended, Ethan sat alone with his laptop, staring at financial projections that told competing stories depending on which time frame you examined. The board was right that short-term numbers showed losses. They were also wrong that those losses indicated failure. His phone rang, an unknown number which he normally wouldn't answer, but something made him pick up. Mr. Brooks, this is Catherine Martinez from the Point Restaurant. I hope it's okay that I'm calling you directly. I got your number from the staff directory. Of course, Catherine. Is everything all right? More than all right. I wanted to let you know we had a party of 12 last night, a family reunion, mixed economic backgrounds, multiple generations, the kind of group that used to make our staff nervous because they didn't all look like typical Point clientele. And it was one of the best services I've participated in my entire career. The family was so grateful, so appreciative because they'd never experienced this level of hospitality before. They left a 25% tip and a handwritten note thanking us for treating them like valued guests instead of making them feel like they didn't belong. Catherine's voice wavered with emotion. That note is posted in our break room now. The staff keeps looking at it, reading it, remembering why we do this work. Several people have told me they're reconsidering job offers they'd been considering at other properties because they want to be part of what we're building here. Ethan felt something tight in his chest loosen. Thank you for telling me that. Thank you for making it possible. What you're doing, it matters, Mr. Brooks. Don't let anyone convince you otherwise. After hanging up, Ethan walked out onto his balcony. His mother and Marcus were on the beach below, building what appeared to be an architecturally ambitious sandcastle. He watched them work together, Marcus's small hands patting sand while his grandmother provided structural advice, both of them laughing when a wave came too close and threatened their creation. His phone buzzed with another email. This one from David, the room service attendant he'd spoken with earlier in the week. The subject line read simply, "Thank you." The email was brief but powerful. David described how the policy changes had transformed his experience at work, how he no longer felt complicit in discriminatory practices, how he'd stopped dreading his shifts and started enjoying them again. He'd been planning to leave hospitality entirely, but now he wanted to stay, to be part of building something better. More messages came in throughout the afternoon, from Maria, from Robert, from staff members Ethan had never met, but who'd heard about the changes and wanted to share how it had impacted them. Each message was a small confirmation that this fight was worth having, that the board's concerns about quarterly returns missed the point entirely, because the real measure of success wasn't profit margins. It was whether people felt valued, respected, treated with dignity. Numbers could be manipulated, but human experience told the truth. That evening, their last at Azure Crest, Ethan's mother arranged for a private dinner on the beach, tables set up in the sand, tiki torches providing warm light, waves providing the soundtrack. It was extravagant and probably expensive, but she'd insisted, saying they needed to mark the end of the vacation properly. As they ate fresh seafood and watched the sun perform its nightly disappearing act, Marcus announced he'd been thinking about something important. "Dad, when I grow up, I want to help you with the hotels." Ethan set down his fork, giving his son full attention. "Yeah? What made you decide that?" "Because you're making them places where everyone feels welcome. Grandma told me what you've been doing about making sure people are treated nicely no matter what they look like or how much money they have. That's important work." "It is important work, but it's also hard sometimes. People don't always agree with doing the right thing." "Why not?" "Because doing the right thing isn't always the most profitable thing, at least not right away. And some people care more about making money than about being good." Marcus frowned, processing this. "But you care about both, right? Making money and being good?" "I try to. I think they can work together if you're patient and willing to accept that sometimes being good costs more in the short term." "Then that's what I want to do too. Be patient and good, even when it costs more." Ethan pulled his son close, his eyes stinging with emotion he didn't try to hide. "I think your mom would be really proud of the person you're becoming. I think she'd be proud of you too, Dad, for fighting even when it's hard." That night, after Marcus was asleep and his mother had retired to her room, Ethan stood on his balcony one last time, looking out at the dark ocean and the stars scattered across the sky like diamonds on velvet. His phone sat silent for once. No urgent emails or board members demanding attention. Tomorrow they'd drive home. The vacation would end, and reality would reassert itself with all its complications and conflicts. The board would continue pushing back. Some guests would continue complaining about lost exclusivity. Revenue projections would remain contentious for quarters to come. But something fundamental had shifted. Not just at Azure Crest, but in Ethan himself. He'd walked into this resort wearing worn clothes and carrying the weight of wondering whether dignity could survive in luxury hospitality. He was leaving with proof that it could, that it must, that building systems based on respect rather than hierarchy was both possible and powerful. The fight wasn't over. In many ways, it was just beginning. But standing there in the darkness, listening to waves that had been washing this shore long before luxury resorts existed and would continue long after, Ethan felt something he hadn't experienced in the 3 years since his wife's death. Hope. Not the naive kind that believed change came easily, but the durable kind forged from actually attempting difficult things and discovering they were possible after all. His phone buzzed one final time. A message from Sarah with a link to a travel industry article titled "Azure Crest's Bold Experiment: Can Luxury and Equality Coexist?" Ethan read it quickly, noting the balanced coverage. Interviews with guests who loved the changes and those who hated them, analysis of the business implications, questions about whether this approach could scale industry-wide. The article ended with a quote from an industry analyst. What Brooks is attempting at Azure Crest challenges fundamental assumptions about luxury hospitality. If he succeeds, it could reshape the entire industry. If he fails, it will reinforce the status quo. Either way, everyone is watching. Let them watch, Ethan thought. Let them analyze and question and predict failure. Let the board express concerns and competitors wait for him to stumble. Let the guests who equated exclusivity with excellence take their business elsewhere. Because he'd learned something important this week. The measure of a life well lived wasn't counted in quarterly returns or profit margins or satisfied shareholders. It was counted in moments of human connection, in dignity preserved, in small acts of respect multiplied across countless interactions until they transformed culture itself. It was counted in Catherine's renewed passion for hospitality, in David's decision to stay instead of leaving, in Maria's cautious hope that change might actually be real. It was counted in Mrs. Patterson's family feeling welcome for the first time at a luxury resort, in countless other families who would have similar experiences in the years to come. It was counted in Marcus's announcement that he wanted to help build places where everyone felt valued, in a 7-year-old absorbing lessons about dignity and justice that would shape the person he'd become. And it was counted in Ethan himself, standing on a balcony overlooking the Pacific Ocean, knowing he'd chosen the harder path because it was the right one, knowing his wife would have supported this fight, knowing that some battles were worth having even when victory wasn't guaranteed. The waves kept rolling in, eternal and indifferent to human concerns. But Ethan Brooks, who owned this resort and 17 others like it, who'd been slapped and dismissed and told he didn't belong in a place he owned, who'd decided that dignity mattered more than dividends, he stood watching those waves and felt certain of his course. Tomorrow would bring new challenges. But tonight, he'd won something more valuable than quarterly returns. He'd proven that respect didn't have to be rationed, that hospitality could be genuine rather than calculated, that luxury and humanity could coexist if people were brave enough to build systems that valued both. And if one quiet man in worn clothes could challenge an entire industry's assumptions about who deserved dignity, imagine what was possible when others joined the fight. The stars overhead offered no answers, but Ethan didn't need them. He already knew what mattered, what he was fighting for, what he'd continue building regardless of resistance. A world where every person who walked through a door, anywhere, could expect to be treated with respect. Not because of what they wore or drove or owned, but because they were human. That was the goal. That was worth everything. And standing there in the California night, Ethan Brooks committed himself to that vision with the kind of certainty that changes lives, transforms industries, and reminds everyone watching that some principles are worth defending at any cost. Because dignity isn't negotiable. Respect isn't conditional. And sometimes, the most revolutionary act is simply treating everyone like they matter. Because they do.